ease to jubilant excitement, akin to the festive spirit of the new year. Yet, he also felt a sense of melancholy for these great beings. What merit was there in their joy? His master's words had already elucidated everything. All is predetermined. From the moment the 6 meditation cushions were occupied, the roles of the sage's disciples and the sage's position had been irrevocably established, invariant across any realm or time. It appeared to herald to the heavens that blessings were imminent, yet regardless of their elation, the opportunity would not befall them. Even with the sage above, the students, though comprehending the teachings, still harbored doubts in their hearts. One dared to inquire of the sage, how many paths exist to becoming a sage? At this, Laozi of the 3 pure ones was the first to rise, voicing the perplexities that weighed upon his mind. Upon hearing this, the 3,000 Zishao guests stifled their excitement, straining to listen intently. The methods for attaining sagehood in the final millennium were exceedingly difficult to comprehend. This inquiry is one that they too wish to pose. In this present age, I, Laozi, have straightforwardly presented this question, allowing the sage to summarize it. Much to their satisfaction, Hongjun nodded slightly, and, after gesturing for me to take a seat, spoke softly. The path to sanctification has, thus far, 3 methods. The first is to validate the Tao through strength, achieving sanctification through the physical body. This method requires a profound bloodline, utilizing the vitality of one's essence to temper the body, refining it to a state capable of bearing the weight of the laws. Ultimately, when the laws reach perfection, one can break free from constraints and attain sanctification through the physical form. The second is the annihilation of the 3 corpses to achieve sanctification. This method is also my own path to sanctification, wherein one must eradicate their own virtuous corpse, malevolent corpse, and self-corpse. Each corpse must be entrusted to a primordial spiritual treasure, requiring 3 such treasures in total. Upon the completion of this unification, in conjunction with the primordial purple chi, one can attain sanctification. The third is to achieve sanctification through merit. This necessitates a robust foundation, cultivating the primordial spirit, thereby amplifying the power of merit. By accomplishing a merit wheel of 9,999 zhang, one must merge this wheel with the primordial spirit. Coupled with the primordial purple chi, one can attain sanctification through merit. I consider this method to be the simplest path to sanctification. Upon concluding Hongjuan's summary, the hall fell into silence, with every powerful being displaying expressions of profound enlightenment. It became apparent that the teachings of the sage regarding the path to sanctification over the last millennium were indeed profound. However, there were still those who remained bewildered. Although the sage had outlined 3 methods of sanctification, the issue lay in their superficiality. The specifics of how to undertake each method had yet to be elucidated. Furthermore, they had grasped a crucial point. Master, the students wished to inquire, what is the primordial purple chi? At that moment, one of the 6 futons, the Taoist of guidance, abruptly rose to articulate the question that had just crossed everyone's minds. Indeed, as soon as Hongjun the sage concluded, the 3,000 mighty beings recognized a significant dilemma. Aside from the physical path to sanctification, the other 2 methods necessitated one critical element, the primordial purple chi, for their execution. Yet, what is this primordial purple chi? They had never encountered such a term before. Buzz. Following the inquiry raised by the Taoist of guidance, Hongjun Daozu waved his right hand. Behold, the violet mist surged above the purple cloud palace, from which emerged 7 magnificent and profoundly mysterious auras. 9 is the ultimate number. Since the inception of the cosmos, the primordial world has birthed 9 strands of primordial purple chi, each corresponding to a position of a sage. However, as the great Tao encompasses 50, and the heavenly transformations yield 49, one is lost. After its birth, 1 strand vanished, leaving only 8 in the realm. Before my own sanctification, I acquired one of these strands, enabling my ascension. After achieving sanctification, I collected the remaining 7 strands from the world, and they are all present here. Listening to Hongjuan's exposition, the multitude of powerful beings were enraptured, their eyes glowing with an unprecedented brilliance. They fixated intently on the 7 strands of primordial purple chi hovering above the hall. They comprehended it fully. They grasped the significance. The 7 strands of primordial purple chi, corresponding to the 7 sacred positions. To obtain it is to attain the status of a sage. In this moment, even the 3 pure ones, manifestations of Panga's primordial essence, could not suppress the glimmer of greed in their eyes. 3,000 mighty beings and 2 celestial youths were all fixated on the 7 strands of primordial purple chi, their hearts fervently clamoring, I must possess it. I must possess it. With it, I shall achieve sanctity. Observing this scene, Tong Yi on the Tao platform remained composed. 6 cushions signified that another strand of primordial purple chi would emerge. Would this strand subsequently be claimed by Han Yun? As for himself, Had he harbored thoughts of seizing a strand during the second sermon when Hongjun spoke of the primordial chi? Not at that moment. Yet, he had resolved to forge his path through strength. If one was to shatter all constraints and rules with sheer force, attaining sanctity through the corporeal form, what need remained for the primordial chi, which was shackled within the rules? For a sage, what difference did this hold compared to the list of deities for the heavenly court and its celestial beings? To possess it would only serve as a chain. This scene did not escape the watchful gaze of Hongjun, the Tao ancestor. Observing his wayward disciple, he felt a surge of pride. Looking around the grand hall, which boasted 3,000 mighty beings, he noted that each was unable to conceal their avarice upon witnessing the primordial chi. Only his beloved disciple remained steadfast, unmoved like a mountain. Who dares to call this disciple a wayward child? This disciple is truly remarkable. After a moment of satisfaction, Hongjun resolved to encourage Tong Yi to pursue the path of severing the three corpses to attain sanctity. Such a resolute heart deserves more than to let the chance of severing the three corpses slip away. With this thought, Hongjun turned his gaze toward the assembly below and shook his head in disdain. Among the 3,000, none could surpass his disciple. Awaken. Suddenly, the voice of the sage reverberated through the hall. In an instant, the 3,000 guests from the purple cloud realm were jolted as if struck by lightning, their expressions of greed vanishing entirely. What just happened? How frightening. Was I possessed? Did I truly harbor murderous intent? Such a temptation in the pursuit of sanctity. Alas, after a lifetime of cultivation, priding myself on a boundless heart, yet today I succumbed to the path. In that moment, the 3,000 mighty beings were filled with shame, each self-deprecating. Is there anyone with questions? However, Hongjun did not waste time on their folly, directly stating, Master, I have a question. At that moment, Tong Yi raised his hand. The 3,000 mighty beings were momentarily taken aback. Oh, for the first time, Hongjun displayed a smile. Speak on. Chapter 93. The Tao ancestor was befuddled, borrowing merit from the heavenly Tao. Upon hearing Tong Yi raise a question, Hongjun felt a sense of relief. The 3,000 mighty beings and the two celestial youths were slightly taken aback, then quickly adopted serious expressions. In their view, a disciple of the sage, nurtured under the sage's guidance, could hardly have any confusions. Confusion indeed abounds, but the lofty Hao Yin Yaoqi remains unfazed. This senior brother possesses an extraordinary comprehension that requires no guidance. In a mere century, he grasps the Zixiao Heart Sutra and ascends to the true immortal realm. Within 10 millennia, he attains the Tai Golden Immortal status without reliance on external aid, bravely enduring the trials of 49 purple lightning tribulations. He alone comprehends the laws of time, space, formations, and thunder. Each of these singularly is a marvel that could astonish the heavens. Yet all transpire within this remarkable senior brother. From Hao Yin Yaoqi's perspective, his future achievements are destined to rival those of the venerable master. However, today, this prodigious talent is beset by doubts, piquing Hao Yin Yaoqi's curiosity. What query could this senior brother possibly have? The disciple's inquiry, feeling the weight of numerous gazes upon him, leaves Tong Yi feeling somewhat disheartened. He realizes he has been overly conspicuous. It is merely a question, must they react so extravagantly? He then articulates, among the three paths to sainthood, which type of saint is the most formidable? Upon utterance of these words, silence envelopes the grand hall. The 3,000 mighty beings exchange glances, bewildered. Is this truly the extent of his inquiry? They had anticipated a question of profound depth. Yet he seems solely interested in determining which saint holds greater strength. Such shallowness. However, it soon dawns on the assembled powers that this inquiry bears significant weight. Without clarity on which saint is superior, should they exhaust their lifetimes to achieve enlightenment, only to find themselves weaker than their counterparts, it would be too late. Realization strikes the 3,000 mighty beings, and gratitude fills their eyes as they regard Tong Yi. The disciples of saints possess a different level of foresight. While they ponder how to attain the primordial purple energy to become saints, he has already begun to deliberate which type of saint may ultimately prevail. Feeling the intensity of their stares, Tong Yi finds himself perplexed. What is this gratitude they express? They need not overthink their paths. Their only route is the cultivation of merit to achieve sainthood. Unlike him, who has long grasped the method of slaying the three corpses to attain sainthood, having already condensed the merit golden wheel once, and now possessing the law of strength alongside the 9 transformations mysterious skill, the corporeal path to sainthood is within reach. What troubles him is not the corporeal attainment of sainthood, but rather the dilemma of whether the primordial spirit should pursue merit-based or corpse-slaying sainthood. Indeed, having chosen the dual cultivation path, it is imperative not to waver midway. Thus, achieving dual cultivation and sainthood would be most beneficial. With this thought, Tong Yi lets out a forlorn sigh, lamenting that they simply do not understand. The 3,000 mighty beings remain oblivious. However, Hongjun Daozu perceives the true nature of this wayward disciple's thoughts with a single glance. Ever since this wayward disciple's return, Hongjun has sensed an unusual aura emanating from him, indicative of a successful acquisition of the 9 transformations mysterious skill from the Witch Clan. Yet, this mischievous monkey refrains from mentioning it, maintaining a facade of playful banter, leaving Hongjun reluctant to inquire further. Ultimately, one could only give him a kick to ascertain the strength of this wayward disciple's physique. Indeed, with that single kick, Hongjun was already convinced in his heart that this wayward disciple had truly entered the Panga Hall and acquired the 9 transformations of profound arts. At that moment, upon posing such a question, his thoughts became evident. Hongjun couldn't help but sigh. This wayward disciple harbored grand ambitions. To achieve sanctification through the physical body? How easily one speaks. If it were that simple, would he have chosen to sever the 3 corpses? As for attaining sanctification through dual cultivation, that was an aspiration reaching higher than the heavens. Yet, upon further reflection, breaking conventions and creating miracles with this anomalous disciple did not seem as insurmountable as it first appeared. Perhaps, in the future, he would indeed be surpassed by this wayward disciple. Hongjun's mind was a tempest of thoughts, though in the external world, only a fleeting moment had passed. After Tong Yi posed his question, he did not hesitate but immediately replied. The way encompasses 3,000 paths, indistinguishable by status. The realm of sages is inherently equal. Upon hearing this, the 3,000 mighty beings collectively breathed a sigh of relief. If that were the case, there was no need to be entangled in the methods of sanctification. However, just as they were contemplating this, they witnessed Hongjun Daozu speak again. Yet, achieving sanctification through the physical body involves breaking all shackles, presenting challenges even greater than the other 2 paths of sanctification. Thus, those who attain sanctification in this manner will be somewhat stronger than the others. Upon hearing these words, Tong Yi's heart settled. He understood that, in that case, he should embark on the path of spiritual sanctification, choosing the simpler route. After all, he would not alter his primary focus on achieving sanctification through the physical body. The many mighty beings initially furrowed their brows but quickly relaxed. In their view, achieving sanctification through the physical body was fundamentally impossible. Otherwise, the 12 ancestors of the Witch Clan would have already attained it. Furthermore, all present were practitioners of the spiritual path, incapable of cultivating the physical body. Given this, why ponder further and invite unnecessary troubles? As long as the path of severing the 3 corpses was as powerful as the path of virtuous sanctification, that sufficed. With this line of thought, the 3,000 mighty beings had already formed a preliminary plan for their own paths to sanctification. Soon, they began to inquire about their respective questions. Nuwa, who intended to pursue virtuous sanctification, asked how to seek opportunities and gain the power of virtue. Hongjun Daozu replied, once you reach the pinnacle of the Hunyuan Golden Immortal, if you possess good fortune, the heavenly Tao will naturally bestow insights and guidance. For instance, the Yuan Shi Daoran, who planned to pursue the path of severing the 3 corpses, inquired about the specifics of this method. Hongjun Daozu, not withholding information, responded, severing the 3 corpses does not follow a sequence. The 3 corpses consist of the good corpse, the evil corpse, and the self corpse. The good corpse severs benevolent thoughts and morals, the evil corpse severs malevolent thoughts and desires, and the self corpse severs attachments and self-awareness. These inquiries also brought substantial insights to the many mighty beings within the hall. As each mighty being posed their questions, a tacit agreement to avoid repetition led to the emergence of a variety of peculiar inquiries. For instance, that guide, upon inquiring of the Tao ancestor, posed a rather audacious question. If one lacks sufficient merit yet aspires to achieve sanctity, could one beseech the heavenly Tao for merit or perhaps sign a contract to borrow some? This inquiry left the Tao ancestor momentarily taken aback. The assembly of 3,000 formidable beings was rendered speechless. To beg the heavenly Tao for merit? What audacity it must take to voice such a query. Oh, is it the 2 sages from the West? In that case, it is of no consequence. The Tao ancestor had never contemplated such a matter. He immediately communicated with the will of the heavenly Tao and ultimately received the answer. One must possess at least half of the requisite merit to qualify for inquiry. And whether one can achieve sanctity depends entirely on karmic affinity. This revelation left the 3,000 great beings in a state of astonishment. In other words, it is indeed possible. The guide and the sage, filled with ecstatic surprise, proclaimed the heavenly Tao as just and compassionate. This time, the 3,000 great beings refrained from deriding them. After all, these 2 shameless individuals had inadvertently conceived an alternative path to sanctity. Indeed, should they manage to accumulate half of the merit required for sanctity, who could resist the temptation to try? Soon, All queries from the 3,000 great beings were addressed. Their eyes sparkled with fervent excitement. The session of questions and answers had concluded. Next, the saints were to accept disciples. Tao Ancestor, please proceed with the next step. I yearn to be your disciple. Well, he declared, today my merit is complete, and shortly I shall unite with the heavens to explore the next realm. The establishment of the mystical gate serves three purposes. First, to impart the Tao to all beings. Those who enter the mystical gate must disseminate the celestial path throughout the heavens. Second, to stabilize the primordial wilderness. Those who enter must remain steadfastly concerned for the primordial wilderness and quell any unrest. Third, to convey a message to the disciples of the mystical gate. Chapter 94. Those who surpass me shall take my place as the foremost disciple. Upon hearing this third statement, the 3,000 great beings paused in surprise. Then, an unprecedented battle spirit surged within them. They exchanged glances, their eyes devoid of any kindness as they surveyed the powerful figures seated around them. The entire hall was suddenly thick with a tense atmosphere. Even those who were once close allies now jested with one another. Old Yuan, do not let me down this time. The venerable Red Cloud, seated in the last row, cast a glance toward the second row where the Zen Yuanzi sat, subtly conveying his thoughts. Rest assured, Old Red, this is the disciple of a saint. I shall not be overly generous, Zen Yuanzi replied, raising his hand in response. Yet, his tone remained remarkably calm. The familiar Red Cloud sighed inwardly, understanding that his old friend, with aspirations as lofty as the heavens, was not unlike the ancestral deity Dijiang. Having attended the Tao teachings thrice already, he had certainly humbled himself. To become a disciple of the Tao Ancestor? It was likely that Zen Yuanzi would inwardly resist such an idea. Brother, if you relinquish the mat to me, I shall surely assist you in vying for the position of the saint's disciple. Nuwa gazed at her brother Fushi behind her and conveyed her thoughts. In her eyes, her brother possessed exceptional talent and remarkable comprehension, yet he consistently bestowed the best upon her. Those instances in the past could be overlooked, but today, she was resolute in securing a position for her brother as a disciple of a sage, even if it were merely as an outer disciple. At that moment, the grand hall buzzed with excitement as numerous powerful beings secretly communicated among themselves. Only the three pure ones remained seated on their meditation cushions, displaying no signs of disturbance. As embodiments of Pangu's primordial spirit, the three pure ones emerged with inherent virtues and blessings. They possessed the unwavering confidence that they would undoubtedly become disciples of the Xianmen. And moreover, all three brothers could gain entry. Without such confidence, they would not be the three pure ones. Silence. Observing the lively scene in the grand hall, Haotian Yaotai stepped forward, her youthful voice resonating throughout the space. The multitude of powerful beings gradually focused their attention, their faces brimming with anticipation as they turned towards the Tao Ancestor. They beheld the Tao Ancestor's serene expression, indicative of a successful lecture, his mood seemingly elevated. Exhibiting kindness towards them, rather than reproaching them for their commotion, he patiently awaited their quietude before continuing. This time, I shall accept 6 disciples. Those who enter the Xianmen must possess exceptional talent. Thus, I shall establish a test. The assessment consists of 2 parts, comprehension and strength. The entire evaluation will be conducted by my first disciple. Upon hearing these words, the hall erupted once more. Had it not been for Haotian Yaotai's prior call for silence, they would have undoubtedly voiced their astonishment. It was not due to an abundance of opportunities, but rather the scarcity of them. There were 3,000 individuals in the hall. Yet the Tao Ancestor intended to accept only 6 disciples. 1 disciple for every 500 powerful beings? Such odds were exceedingly low. Most significantly, the Tao Ancestor had appointed Hunyuan Taoist as the examiner. Did this not imply that Hunyuan Taoist held considerable sway over their potential to become disciples of a sage? With this realization, the 3,000 powerful beings cast anxious glances towards the Tao platform, their eyes fixated on Hunyuan Taoist. Among them, the gaze of the East King was particularly radiant. At this moment, he felt a surge of joy. He believed he had made the right connections. Having established rapport with Hunyuan Taoist in advance, he might receive leniency in the assessment, thus becoming one of the sage's disciples. Ideally, he hoped that the West Queen Mother could also benefit from such leniency. That would be utterly delightful. With this thought in mind, the East King directed his gaze towards Tong Yi, blinking repeatedly, his intentions unmistakable. Tao brother, it is I. Remember to ease the assessment for me. I am your junior. Goodness. On the Tao platform, Tong Yi, who had initially thought the upcoming disciple selection might be somewhat tedious and was already stifling yawns, suddenly jolted awake. To his surprise, everything seemed predetermined, leaving little to anticipate. Yet, what had he just heard? An assessment? And he was to serve as the examiner? Tong Yi turned his gaze towards Hong Jun Daozu, his eyes brimming with confusion. Though he did not utter a word, His expression was a veritable tapestry of questions. Could it be, master? What game are you playing? Are you jesting with me? Hong Jun, however, paid no heed to the myriad inquiries reflected in Tong Yi's gaze. He merely cast a fleeting glance in his direction, as if to suggest, you may yawn now. In an instant, Hong Jun Daozu presented a monumental temptation to the throng of 3,000 powerful beings. Should anyone surpass my foremost disciple, they would have the opportunity to supplant him and assume that esteemed position. The assessment was to commence immediately, the first trial being one of comprehension. Let them engage in discourse. Upon concluding his remarks, Hong Jun Daozu closed his eyes, adopting the demeanor of a nonchalant overseer. Yet, his words detonated like a bomb cast into a tranquil lake, sending ripples throughout the grand hall. What did I just hear? Foremost disciple? Surely, I must be imagining things. Is this truly the case? Am I to become the disciple of a saint? Oh, benevolent sage, I shall give my utmost effort. My dear Hun Yuan, I beg your pardon. Do exercise caution. The 3,000 powerful beings erupted in exclamations, shedding the reverential expressions they had donned moments prior. After all, the Daozu had declared that victory over Hun Yuan would grant one the opportunity to take his place. Each individual yearned to become a disciple of the saint, and to be the foremost disciple was an even greater aspiration. Among them, the three clear ones were most fervent. As the primordial spirits of Pangu, they harbored no fear of anyone. Initially, they had accepted the notion of becoming Huan Yuan's junior brother by virtue of seniority, but upon hearing Hong Jun Daozu's proclamation, they felt no need for further decorum. The three clear ones had never feared any adversary. In an instant, the atmosphere in the grand hall ignited with fervor, each powerful being displaying a countenance filled with martial spirit. Even the Eastern King, who had just moments ago been obsequiously winking at Tong Yi, now transformed his expression, his gaze seemingly imploring. Junior brother, allow me this honor. What does this mean? Wait, did I consent to this? Tong Yi was utterly bewildered. He surveyed the gathering below. Each of the 3,000 powerful beings with eyes alight, akin to wolves poised for a hunt, then glanced towards the meditative Hong Jun Daozu beside him. An inner cacophony of bewilderment surged within him. Was this truly necessary? Did you not declare, old man Hong Jun, that I would forever be your foremost disciple? What trickery is this? Is it not enough to be an examiner? Now I must contend with the prospect of being supplanted? This was not how the original tale unfolded. Such a narrative did not exist. Yet, no matter how fervently Tong Yi attempted to communicate with Hong Jun, the latter remained ensconced in his meditative state, as if in deep contemplation. Brother, may we also partake? Just then, the scene unfolded. Tong Yi heard the tender whispers of two young voices and instinctively looked down. He saw the two little ones from Hao Yi and Yao Qi, their round, glistening eyes filled with hope as they gazed up at him. What is it? Why are you two making such a fuss? I'll spank you in a moment. Tong Yi felt speechless. The old man had stirred up such chaos in the great hall. Everyone was looking at him like famished wolves eyeing their prey. Junior brother, I have come to debate with you. At that moment, a voice resonated from below the Dao platform, reverberating throughout the hall and instantly silencing all the clamor. Junior brother, I have come to debate with you. The voice exuded confidence, and the initial address was brazenly arrogant, as if the speaker were assured of victory in claiming the position of the foremost disciple of the sage. The 3,000 powerful beings were momentarily taken aback. Who dares to be so audacious? Jumping straight to junior brother? We haven't even spoken yet, and he has already seized the opportunity. On the Dao platform, Tong Yi's anger flared upon hearing this. Oh, so this is how you want to play? You aim to replace me right from the start. Now I understand why the old man orchestrated this assessment. To force me to crush you all. Is it merely a debate? Very well. Allow me to demonstrate what a dimensional strike truly is. With that thought, Tong Yi followed the sound, his gaze cold and indifferent. He was curious to discover which individual dared to be more arrogant than he. Previously, they had all addressed each other as fellow Taoist, and now they jumped straight to junior brother. In the next moment, Tong Yi and the 3,000 powerful beings fixed their eyes upon the figure seated on the foremost of the 6 cushions beneath the Dao platform. Junior brother, do not be angry. I merely possess the legacy of Pangu, having emerged into the world a bit later than you. In terms of debate, you cannot surpass me. The figure seated on the cushion, Ta Ching Laozu, stated calmly, his presence as steadfast as a mountain. Upon hearing these words, the 3,000 powerful beings, who had been filled with defiance just a moment ago, were momentarily taken aback. After some contemplation, their initial resistance faded away. Indeed, they had not fully considered the implications. Who among the 3,000 in the hall could possibly rival Ta Ching Laozu in a debate? It is known that the primordial spirit of the great Pangu had divided into 3 paths. Even if he had attained sanctity in physical form, could his primordial spirit be weak? Ta Ching was the foremost of the 3 pure ones. At that moment, the other 2, Shangqing and Yuqing, sat quietly, hesitant to refute him. Who among them could claim to hold a foundation comparable to that of Ta Ching? With this realization, a collective sigh arose amongst the crowd. In their earlier excitement upon hearing the words of the Tao ancestor, they had overlooked the formidable presence of Ta Ching. Now, as they regained their composure and reflected on the matter, they began to understand. The position of the foremost disciple of the sage may indeed be supplanted by Tai Ching. Consequently, their fervor, apart from offending the primordial Taoist, serves little purpose. As the 3,000 formidable beings silently scold themselves, they lift their gazes towards the Tao platform, intrigued by whether the primordial Taoist will accept Tai Ching's challenge. No, he must accept. Such is the decree set by the sage. The pressing question remains, can he emerge victorious? It seems he must now seek to curry favor with the three pure ones. There is no need for excessive words. Let us engage in discourse. If you are capable of winning, what significance does it hold to grant you this position? Under the collective gaze of the multitude, Tong Yi remains unperturbed, responding to Tai Ching Laozi with an air of calm detachment. In contrast to Laozi's aggressive demeanor, Tong Yi's composure radiates elegance and poise, garnering silent nods of approval from the 3,000 potentates. This alone suggests that, from a perspective of mindset, Tai Ching Laozi falls short of the primordial Taoist. Mere bluster. Observing this, Yuan Shi Taoist, standing beside Laozi, scoffs inwardly, his face betraying his dissatisfaction. Among the 3,000 in the grand hall, he acknowledges only his elder brother, Tai Ching Laozi. As for his third brother, Tong Tian Taoist, Yuan Shi considers him hardly noteworthy. Regarding the primordial Taoist upon the platform, Yuan Shi harbors discontent. Believing that apart from his fortunate encounter with the Tao ancestor, which led to his apprenticeship, he is nothing more than that. Yuan Shi is convinced that the Tao ancestor's imposition of this trial stems from a weariness with the primordial Taoist, and thus, his elder brother is destined to take his place. In due course, he himself might challenge the primordial Taoist to seize the title of the sage's second disciple. Tong Tian Taoist observes all of this with a sense of quiet lament. He too perceives that the primordial Taoist has indeed angered the sage. Otherwise, such a situation would not arise. However, regarding the prospect of replacing the primordial Taoist to become the sage's foremost disciple, Tong Tian feels that his two elder brothers are misguided. The primordial Taoist is quite amiable. Despite being a disciple of the sage, he has never looked down upon them. On the contrary, he is approachable and, most importantly, remarkably handsome, resembling Tong Tian himself. Yet, Tong Tian finds himself powerless as his two elder brothers regard him as a mere child, entirely disregarding his opinions. He cannot thwart the actions of his elder brother. At this moment, he can only cast an apologetic glance towards the primordial Taoist upon the platform. Indeed, while Tong Tian believes his elder brother's actions to be incorrect, he also recognizes that in a debate, the primordial Taoist would undoubtedly fall short of his elder brother's prowess. Sensing Tong Tian's gaze, Tong Yi momentarily pauses, blinks, and responds with a smile in his eyes. Such is his nature. Others respect me, and I reciprocate that respect. However, should anyone dare to deceive, slander, or destroy me, I must express my disdain. Such behavior is unacceptable. Even the primordial being Pangu would be powerless in such matters. Very well. Upon witnessing the response of the Hunyuan Taoist, the venerable Laozi could not help but emit a scoff within. He had initially intended to grant the other some dignity, yet was taken aback by the latter's audacious demeanor. Thus, he resolved to cast aside any semblance of leniency. With this thought, Laozi rose to his feet and, after bowing to Tong Yixing, addressed him. The sage has just proclaimed that the way follows nature, and that through perfect virtue one may attain sanctity. Thus, I inquire, what is the way, and what constitutes virtue? At these words, the grand hall fell into a profound silence. The echo of Laozi's inquiries, what is the way, what is virtue, resounded throughout the hall, reverberating endlessly. The 3,000 mighty beings widened their eyes in astonishment, their mouths agape, rendered utterly speechless. This query, seemingly directed towards the Hunyuan Taoist, inadvertently ensnared all listeners, plunging them into a contemplative abyss. Indeed, what is the way? What is virtue? In that moment, the 3,000 mighty beings and the two celestial youths found themselves momentarily paralyzed, as if enchanted, their gazes vacant. They felt as though they stood in the midst of a flowing river of time. The past represented the way, the very path they had devoted their lives to cultivating. The future embodied virtue, the merit required for attaining sanctity. Yet, what precisely is the way? And what is virtue? The myriad of powerful beings felt their minds falter. In that instant, they became engulfed in self-inquiry, casting aside all external matters such as assessments and philosophical debates. The way that can be spoken of is not the eternal way. The virtue that can be defined is not the constant virtue. It was then that a clear, resonant voice, akin to ethereal celestial music, echoed in the minds of the 3,000 mighty beings. This voice began softly, gradually growing louder until it resounded like a great bell, reverberating throughout their consciousness. Boom! The 3,000 mighty beings perceived this voice as possessing profound, mysterious power. It transcended time and space, shattering the illusions of their self-doubt. Instantly, they awoke from their stupor, the bewilderment in their eyes replaced by clarity and enlightenment. What is happening? They startled, looking towards the source of the sound, only to behold the Hunyuan Taoist standing with hands behind his back upon the Tao platform. A subtle, enigmatic smile graced his lips, his eyes seemingly harboring endless galaxies, as he locked gazes with them. The profound celestial voice that expounded upon the true essence of virtue, aiding them in breaking through their obsessions and obstacles, emanated from his very mouth. Chapter 96, A Foretaste of the Tao Te Ching. Laozi achieves enlightenment. What is happening to me? Am I possessed? Have I truly fallen into obsession? Is it possible that the exposition of virtue, akin to the celestial sound of the Tao, was indeed spoken by my esteemed Taoist friend? I express my heartfelt gratitude to the esteemed Taoist Hunyuan. Were it not for your intervention, I would have undoubtedly succumbed to the malevolent seeds of chaos this time, even if I managed to survive. Upon awakening, the 3,000 great beings beheld the Hunyuan Taoist expounding on the essence of Tao and virtue upon the Tao platform. Instantly, they revealed expressions of profound relief and trepidation, having narrowly escaped calamity. Subsequently, the trio of 1,000 mighty beings collectively bowed in gratitude towards the Tao platform, their voices resonating with sincerity, and their faces reflecting genuine appreciation. There is no need for excessive formalities. It was merely a discourse between myself and the esteemed Taoist Ta Ching. Your involvement was entirely inadvertent, and I could not stand idly by. On the Tao platform, Tong Yi ceased his recitation of the Tao Te Ching, clasping his hands behind his back, and addressed the 3,000 mighty beings with an air of nonchalance, as if rescuing them from the brink of despair was a trivial matter. Yet, in truth, it was indeed so. Reflecting on the entire episode, Tong Yi found it to be remarkably theatrical. Initially, when engaging in discourse with Taoist Ta Ching, he appeared outwardly composed, though internally he was a bundle of nerves. No one understood his own apprehensions better than he did. There was no divine comprehension of the Tao. His journey from transmigration to strength had relied solely on survival and relentless perseverance. In contrast, Taoist Ta Ching, though not yet a sage, possessed a profound understanding of the Tao that could overshadow all present. Thus, Tong Yi felt a lack of confidence. However, he did not anticipate that Taoist Ta Ching's first inquiry would be so direct, asking, "What is virtue?" This question left Tong Yi momentarily stunned. As a transmigrator with the benefit of 9 years of compulsory education, supplemented by a lifetime of cultivation and enhanced perception, he could effortlessly navigate the depths of his past memories. The Tao Te Ching was merely at his fingertips. Yet, had Laozi posed any simpler query, he would have faltered in his response. But the question of virtue struck him profoundly, compelling him to recite the Tao Te Ching. Unexpectedly, his discourse with Laozi inadvertently plunged the 3,000 great beings into a profound introspective crisis, nearly leading them astray. In a twist of fate, his recitation of the Tao Te Ching proved to be the antidote they needed, liberating them from their turmoil. The entire sequence of events was intricate, yet unfolded in mere moments, catching even him off guard. The expressions of gratitude from the mighty beings echoed around him. Yet would he dare to voice this unfolding? Naturally, he would not. Even in his vulnerability, he chose to maintain an air of indifference. As they observed Tong Yi's continued display of humility, the 3,000 great beings felt even more gratitude, tinged with a sense of shame. They could not help but cover their faces and shake their heads, exclaiming, "Alas! The benevolence of Brother Tao is the most profound I have ever witnessed in my life. I am truly humbled." Indeed, Brother Hunyuan has always treated us with the warmth of a friend, yet just moments ago, we acted in a manner that was utterly beneath contempt. His magnanimity is as vast as the 5 continents and 4 oceans, and his spirit stands tall like the unyielding Mount Buzhou. Allow me to bow to you once more. Not only is your heart expansive, but your moral exposition has enlightened me, granting clarity akin to the purest nectar cascading upon my mind. Such profound principles. Who could possibly rival them? At this moment, the 3,000 formidable beings were engulfed by a tumult of emotions, feelings of guilt resonating within their hearts. Some were so overwhelmed by shame that they struck themselves in frustration. Upon hearing the words of the Tao ancestor regarding the potential to succeed the saint's foremost disciple, they were consumed by greed, each desiring to compete. Yet what was the outcome? Their schemes backfired, leading to a loss instead. A mere question posed by the esteemed Laozi had nearly driven them to madness through self-reflection. However, at this juncture, Brother Hunyuan did not exploit their misfortune. Rather, He generously repaid grievances with virtue, offering them salvation. In stark contrast, their shame was palpable, and after expressing their gratitude, they could not even bear to meet Brother Huanyuan's gaze. Reflecting on this, the multitude of powerful beings could not help but ponder, was it not Laozi who orchestrated this entire affair? Soon after, their hearts ignited with indignation. All their ire directed towards Laozi. How could he be so domineering? Merely engaging in discourse, he had introduced such a formidable conundrum. Indeed, where was Taoist Taiji? Why had he fallen silent? Did he dare not engage Brother Huanyuan in debate? This time, Taoist Taiji, you have truly erred. What has happened to you? Surely, I must be mistaken. As the 3,000 powerful beings began to voice their grievances against the true instigator, Laozi, they were rendered speechless upon observing his current state. Their expressions morphing into sheer astonishment. They beheld Taoist Taiji, seated in a meditative posture, eyes tightly shut, seemingly oblivious to the tumult within the grand hall. This alone was remarkable. Most notably, his condition was extraordinary. Moments earlier, amidst the chaos, while everyone was reveling in their narrow escape, they now recognized that the venerable Laozi appeared to have entered a state of profound enlightenment. Around him, myriad Taoist runes swirled, and ethereal sounds of wisdom reverberated from his being, his aura becoming increasingly enigmatic. What shocked and incited envy among the 3,000 powerful beings was that the already advanced Laozi now exhibited signs of rapid ascension in his cultivation. All signs indicated that Laozi had indeed attained enlightenment. What in the world? Is this truly possible? Tong Yi, witnessing this scene, could not help but exclaim, his face a canvas of disbelief. Are we not in the midst of a philosophical debate? How is it that you sit down and attain enlightenment in such a manner? It seems as though you are deliberately fishing for my recitation of the Tao Te Ching. Upon this realization, Tong Yi could not help but grit his teeth in silent agony. The pain was excruciating. It was intolerable to think that he had fallen prey to Tai Ching. As for why Tai Ching was able to achieve enlightenment, Tong Yi quickly discerned the reason. It was akin to the previous occurrence that had led to celestial anomalies. The Tao Te Ching was composed only after Laozi attained sainthood. Yet, Tai Ching had somehow managed to prematurely unveil the sage's work. He had been careless. At that moment, a synchronized intake of breath from the crowd jolted Tong Yi from his thoughts. Looking down, he was met with a sea of 3,000 spectators, all regarding him with the gaze of one observing a curious creature. Tong Yi felt an immediate pang of discomfort in his jaw. He understood all too well what their stares implied. They had misconstrued his intentions once again. Brother Tong Tian, in place of my elder brother, I extend my sincerest apologies to you. Just then, a voice, slightly awkward yet brimming with respect, resonated from below the platform. Tong Tian, the Taoist, stood up, clasped his hands together in a gesture of reverence, and bowed deeply to Tong Yi. Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback, but soon a smile graced his lips. It seemed that Tong Tian was indeed a good younger brother. Upon witnessing Tong Yi's smile, Tong Tian felt a wave of relief wash over him. He looked at Tong Yi with gratitude, then turned to the 3,000 powerful beings, offering them another bow. With sincere earnestness, he spoke, esteemed friends. I sincerely apologize for my elder brother's earlier actions. However, the opportunity for enlightenment must not be squandered. I kindly ask that you refrain from disturbing him until his enlightenment is complete. I assure you, he will offer his apologies afterward. Upon hearing this, the 3,000 powerful beings frowned in unison. While we were ensnared in madness, he himself has attained enlightenment. Tong Tian, we understand your respect for your elder brother. But you too were nearly consumed by madness. You must recognize the gravity of this matter. It is laughable. Tai Ching was so aggressive upon his arrival, even addressing Brother Huanyuan as his junior. Now, look at the repercussions. Tong Tian, it is not that we lack compassion, but we are still in the midst of an assessment. By rights, Tai Ching should rouse Laozi from his reverie. The expressions of the numerous powerful beings darkened. The situation was far from simple. While Tong Tian was courteous and amiable, the crux of the matter could not be resolved merely through etiquette. In their hearts, they bore a grudge against Tai Ching, who had nearly led them to the brink of madness. This was a vendetta. Faced with an adversary, they were fortunate not to seek vengeance, yet they were expected to let Laozi achieve enlightenment with ease, to emerge stronger and continue their aggressive demeanor. They secretly wished for Laozi to succumb to madness at that very moment. In such a scenario, the positions of the 6 disciples of the sages would suddenly increase by 1. As malevolent thoughts began to stir within the crowd, their eyes glinted with coldness, eager to advance and awaken the sage. Even the 2 seated upon the 6 great cushions, Jean and Juanti, exchanged glances, each recognizing the chilling intent reflected in the other's gaze. They perceived that should an opportunity arise to eliminate Taiji, their chances of becoming disciples of the saints would increase manifold, a delightful prospect indeed. Yet, Despite their eagerness, the multitude of powerful beings exchanged wary looks, lacking any tacit agreement. And none dared to step forward first. Who would be so bold? At that moment, a sharp snort pierced the air. Yuan Shi rose, a fierce aura emanating from him. As wisps of pure qi swirled around his form, his countenance was stern, casting a disdainful gaze over the throng of 3,000 mighty beings, and he scoffed. If your own resolve is weak, do not blame my elder brother. Though the question was posed by him, do you not share in the fault? He continued. Are you envious of my elder brother's sudden enlightenment? Do you seek to disturb him? As Yuan Shi spoke, a palpable killing intent radiated from him. He strode forward several steps, positioning himself at the center of the hall, dismissing every powerful figure present with a threatening tone. I challenge anyone to come forth. One will fall, another will follow. Regardless of how Tong Tian might attempt to intervene, Yuan Shi remained undeterred, even casting a glare at him, as if to say that there was no need for civility with such inept beings. Upon hearing his words and witnessing his brazen demeanor, the 3,000 powerful beings could not help but laugh in disbelief. Could one truly dismiss all consequences with a mere utterance? It was not so simple. Even if one were to set aside Taiji's actions, Yuan Shi's arrogance was discomforting to all. How could one of Panga's essence manifest as such a person? Was there a grave error in this transformation? Suddenly, among the throng, one individual boldly challenged Yuan Shi. Bah, who do you think you are? Threatening to kill? Go ahead. Try. For every one of me you slay, there are countless more. Upon hearing this, the crowd initially thought the speaker was merely boasting. However, in the next moment, they witnessed him actually rising and advancing toward Yuan Shi, and they were immediately convinced. For this individual was none other than the venerable ancestor of the Underworld River. He was not exaggerating. As long as the sea of blood remained unquenched, the Underworld River would possess innumerable avatars. Was that not equivalent to stating that for every one slain, there would be thousands more? Seeking death, are you? Then I shall ensure you have no avatars left. Yuan Shi, seeing someone dare to disregard his authority and recklessly provoke him, felt his murderous intent intensify, directed entirely toward the Underworld River. Yet, the Underworld River remained unafraid. He has lived far too long, to the point where everything seems utterly mundane. Nowadays, he finds amusement solely in the presence of Primordial. An exhilarating fervor fills his heart. As for the essence of Pangu, he regards it with disdain. What significance does it hold? I too am a manifestation of Pangu's tainted blood. Do I boast of it? If one were truly to perish, then so be it. After all, the blood sea teems with restless souls and wild spirits, all serving as nourishment for his own manifestations. A single act of self-detonation would suffice for regeneration. With this thought, a surge of blood energy erupted from beneath his crimson attire, unyielding as he charged towards Primordial. The two stood poised, ready to strike. The 3,000 mighty beings within the grand hall observed with eager anticipation. Although Mingi's reputation may not be as notorious as that of Jane and Junti, his penchant for self-detonation after failed treasure hunts has made him equally infamous, and he is far from beloved. As for Primordial, there is no need for further elaboration. Should the two engage in a mutually devastating clash today, the onlookers would revel in the outcome, as it would eliminate two contenders for the position of the saint's disciple. Gentlemen, do mind the occasion. However, at that critical moment, a figure materialized between them, clad in flowing white robes, devoid of any palpable aura, yet effectively stifling both of their formidable presences. Who else could it be but Tong Yi? Tong Yi found himself at a loss for words, not due to the powerful beings surrounding him, but rather in response to Han Jun. Just as Primordial exuded a murderous intent, he glanced at Han Jun, only to find his master seemingly in a deep meditative state, utterly unconcerned with the unfolding drama. The implication was unmistakable. His wayward master, Han Jun, was preparing to merge with the Tao, intending to relinquish all responsibilities to his devoted disciple. If Primordial and Mingi were to engage in battle, especially within this grand hall, he was certain that Han Jun would hold him accountable in an instant. Even if Mingi chose to self-detonate out of frustration, causing harm only to the 3,000 mighty beings would be manageable. However, if any damage were inflicted upon the hall's very essence, its flora, fauna, or even a single tile, it would spell disaster. Once Han Jun stepped down, all of this would fall to him. As for Primordial and Mingi, upon witnessing the interruption, their aggressive postures faltered momentarily. In unison, they turned their clear gazes towards the Tao platform, discovering that the figure remained in tranquil meditation, indifferent to all that transpired. Their tension eased, yet their fiery spirits reignited. What? Would you care to experience the art of my self-detonation? The red-clad and strikingly unusual Mingi directed a provocative glance at Tong Yi, licking his lips in challenge. Primordial offered no semblance of courtesy, retorting sharply, "Cease your pretense of benevolence, Han Yuan. If you were truly righteous, You would suppress them and prevent any disturbance to my elder brother's enlightenment. Moreover, the ability to attain enlightenment stems from my brother's extraordinary comprehension. Yuan Shi could no longer contain his derision, exclaiming, "You can't possibly believe this is due to you, can you?" Just then, before his laughter could dissipate, his vision blurred. In the next moment, a hand swiftly enlarged before him. By the time he realized what was happening, the hand had already struck him with great force. Boom. In an instant, the once mocking Yuan Shi was sent flying like a cannonball, crashing back onto his designated mat. Chapter 98. Yuan Shi is blown away. Tai Ching bows before me. Boom. Yuan Shi's figure slammed down onto his mat, appearing rather disheveled, yet sustaining no injuries whatsoever. Not even a hint of a red mark graced his face. However, at this moment, Yuan Shi was utterly bewildered, staring blankly at the center of the great hall, where stood the very person who had sent him flying. That individual was none other than the Tai Ching Taoist, who had just moments ago been immersed in a profound epiphany. In this instant, Yuan Shi felt lost, his expression one of disbelief. Resentment beginning to brew in the depths of his eyes. He could not comprehend it. He had fiercely glared at the 3,000 powerful beings to protect his elder brother during his moment of enlightenment. Yet, what about the elder brother he cherished so dearly? Without any forewarning, he had struck him. Moreover, in front of such a large audience, he had publicly slapped his face. Why? Why? Meanwhile, the Tai Ching Taoist did not spare Yuan Shi a single glance. Instead, he stood before Tong Yi, hands clasped in a respectful gesture, bowing deeply. His tone was filled with contrition as he spoke. "Brother Hun Yuan, I, Tai Ching, wish to apologize on behalf of my reckless and ignorant brother. He has always been proud and dismissive of others. This is a failure of my guidance. Please forgive him." As he spoke, the Tai Ching Taoist lowered himself even further, as if he would not rise until Tong Yi granted his consent. Witnessing this scene, the entire hall was plunged into a profound silence. The 3,000 powerful beings exchanged glances between the fallen Yuan Shi and the bowing Tai Ching Taoist, their minds momentarily paralyzed. They could not fathom how the situation had evolved in such a manner. Initially, they had anticipated a fierce clash between Yuan Shi and the River of Darkness, leading to mutual destruction. However, in the next moment, they saw the Hunyuan Taoist intervene. Intervention was one thing, but they still expected Yuan Shi and the River of Darkness to continue their fierce confrontation. Yet now, what was unfolding before them? Tai Ching had seemingly concluded his epiphany, sent Yuan Shi flying, and was now bowing in apology to the Hunyuan Taoist. Moreover, he appeared to be so deeply bowed that he would not rise. The 3,000 powerful beings blinked in disbelief, struggling to ascertain whether they were witnessing an illusion. Is this not the same imposing figure who once referred to the primordial Taoist as his junior? How astonishing it is to witness such a transformation, akin to a complete metamorphosis. It is imperative to recognize that bowing in humility stands as the highest form of reverence in the vast expanse of the primordial heavens, second only to prostration. At this moment, the venerable Ta Ching, bent in deference, is undoubtedly acutely aware of the myriad gazes directed towards him from all corners of the grand hall. Yet, he regards them with disdain, silently cursing the so-called celestial beings for their ignorance. While reputation holds significance in ordinary circumstances, does it truly matter in the face of an opportunity for sanctification? Not in the slightest. It can be cast aside at any moment. Indeed, the reason for Ta Ching's humble demeanor, marked by his first act of striking his second brother and this profound bow, lies in the revelation he perceives in Tong Yi, a glimpse of the chance for his own sanctification. Others may be oblivious, perceiving the primordial Taoist elucidation of true moral essence as merely a means to dispel demonic obstacles. However, to Ta Ching, it resonates perfectly with his own path. After merely a few utterances, he feels as though his soul is ascending to the heavens, achieving a profound enlightenment that transports him into a state of sudden realization. Just a few words. Ta Ching is resolute in his belief that as long as he can encourage the primordial Taoist to continue speaking, his path shall reach completion, and he will attain the ultimate fruition. This realization clarifies for Ta Ching the meaning behind the words of Hong Jun Daozu regarding the arrival of the opportunity for sanctification, wherein the heavenly Tao naturally bestows insights. It is evidently a signal directed at him. Moreover, Ta Ching perceives that Hong Jun Daozu's intention in assigning the primordial Taoist as an examiner is to illuminate for him that the primordial Taoist embodies his chance for sanctification. Thus, when Ta Ching awakens from his moment of enlightenment to discover Yuan Shi mocking the primordial Taoist so brazenly, his heart leaps into his throat with alarm. This urgency compels him to strike Yuan Shi away and subsequently bow deeply before Tong Yi. Ta Ching does not perceive this action as inflicting any harm upon Yuan Shi. First and foremost, the method to achieve sanctification must not be squandered. Should he offend the primordial Taoist, as the foremost of the three pure ones, he may irrevocably forfeit his chance at sanctification. Furthermore, who can ascertain that the opportunity for sanctification resides solely with Ta Ching? Might there not be opportunities for Yuan Shi or Tong Tian as well? Therefore, Ta Ching believes his actions are ultimately in Yuan Shi's best interest. Contemplating this, and recalling the profound implications of true moral essence, Ta Ching's eagerness intensifies, causing him to lower his posture even further, nearly folding into an acute angle. Simultaneously, noticing that the primordial Taoist remains unresponsive, he calls out once more, "If my friend does not forgive my brother, then I shall not rise." This exclamation draws Tong Yi back from his astonishment. At this moment, Tong Yi raised his hand to scratch his head, pursed his lips, and sighed. He felt a sense of helplessness towards Tai Ching, who was so cunning and adaptable. He understood the reason behind Tai Ching's change in attitude, but it seemed to him excessively rapid and exaggerated. Shouldn't one possess a modicum of ambition? Moreover, you are the foremost among the three pure ones. Fellow Taoist, I must say I preferred your previous rebellious demeanor, Tong Yi remarked, placing his hand gently on Tai Ching's shoulder and giving it a light pat. Rise. For as the foremost disciple of the sage, I shall not be so petty. He may be rude, but I cannot be. Upon hearing this, Tai Ching suddenly stood up, his aged face brimming with smiles. Your magnanimity, dear friend, indeed rivals the boundless chaos, he replied. Gazing at the old man's face, Tong Yi could not help but ask, will you not call me your junior brother anymore? At this, Tai Ching's smile faltered, and he stumbled slightly. He then clasped his hands in a bow, saying, I previously apologized on behalf of my brother, and this bow serves as my gratitude for your enlightenment. After bowing again, Tong Yi sighed and waved his hand dismissively. Enough. Enough. No need for further bows. It's not a festival. Do you think you are Andy Lau? Tai Ching furrowed his gray-white brows. A look of confusion mixed with a humble inquisitiveness on his face. May I inquire, dear friend, what is a festival? And who is this Andy Lau? Tong Yi raised his hand, signaling Tai Ching to refrain from asking further. The generational gap between them was not merely a matter of age. It spanned across time itself. Tai Ching quickly grasped this, and his expression became serious. Finally diverting his gaze from Tong Yi, he turned to address the entire hall, proclaiming, I concede in our discourse. I am truly convinced. Brother Huan Yuan's position as the sage's foremost disciple is well-deserved. Who among you dares to contest? Only those who can surpass me in debate may challenge Brother Huan Yuan. Upon hearing Tai Ching's declaration, many powerful beings wore expressions akin to that of an elderly gentleman on the subway engrossed in his phone. They felt that another contender, comparable to the likes of Jijin and Zhuani, had emerged. Seeing Tai Ching openly declare his inferiority to Huan Yuan and assert that anyone wishing to debate Huan Yuan must first surpass him, the formidable beings exchanged glances. They silently encouraged one another, yet no one dared to step forward. To debate with the recently enlightened Tai Ching? Only a fool would consider such an act. Furthermore, had they not noticed Tai Ching's peculiar demeanor? He was obedient to Yuan Shi yet submissive to Huan Yuan. It was evident. The shift in Tai Ching's attitude was a clear indication of his acknowledgement of Huan Yuan's profound understanding of the Tao. It became apparent that Tai Ching's enlightenment was likely a result of Huan Yuan's influence, completely contrary to Yuan Shi's claim that Tai Ching had achieved it independently. Understanding this was crucial. In the presence of the multitude, both benevolent and feeble, no one dared to challenge the esteemed Huan Yuan any further. Thus, I hereby proclaim that Huan Yuan Taoist shall firmly retain his position as the foremost disciple of the sage, beyond any doubt. Tai Ching was exceedingly pleased with the profound silence that enveloped the grand hall. At the very least, these Taoist companions displayed more discernment than his second brother. Yet, he cast his gaze across the 3,000, proclaiming, who is in favor? Who stands opposed? Though framed as a question, the undeniable tone in his voice was strikingly evident. The 3,000 mighty beings, witnessing this, felt a sense of disdain within their hearts. When addressing their companion Huan Yuan, they spoke in whispers. Yet now they found their voices emboldened. Is this all there is? The pretense of the Pango primordial spirit? Furthermore, we acknowledge Huan Yuan Taoist. Yet you monopolize the spotlight. What kind of arrangement is this? With such thoughts, the 3,000 ascended, bowing to Tong Yi, exclaiming, Huan Yuan Taoist is indeed the foremost disciple of the sage. I wholeheartedly accept this truth. Indeed, my Tao brother, from the very beginning, I harbored no intention of contesting your position. As I have previously stated, my admiration for you is as vast as the heavens. Unlike certain individuals who change their demeanor with alarming swiftness, the 3,000 spoke with sincerity and reverence, their tone subtly pricking at Tai Ching. At this moment, Tai Ching achieved enlightenment, experiencing a breakthrough into a minor realm, thereby exerting his dominance over the 3,000. Though they dared not exact revenge for their grievances, they still ventured to exchange barbs. In response, Tai Ching maintained an unperturbed countenance, his ears deftly intercepting their veiled jibes. Once the 3,000 had declared their stance, he turned to Tong Yi, a smile gracing his face. Brother, they harbor no objections. Regarding Tai Ching's audacity, Tong Yi chose to remain reticent, merely nodding before turning toward the Dao platform. Hold on. While my capacity for discourse may be lacking, the Dao ancestor has indeed mentioned 2 tiers of assessment. The second tier shall test strength. I challenge you. A voice, laced with a sinister softness, emerged from behind. Tong Yi turned to behold the speaker, none other than the venerable Mingyi, standing resolutely in the center of the grand hall. He radiated an aura of fierce combativeness, his crimson eyes gleaming with madness. As Mingyi had articulated, he was not adept at the discourse, which is why he feigned ignorance when Tai Ching inquired. However, he distinctly remembered the Dao ancestor's words regarding the 2-tiered examination. Mingyi possessed unwavering confidence in his own strength. Though he could not discern the aura of cultivation surrounding Hun Yuan, they were all beneath the sage. How formidable could one be? Even conceding a hypothetical defeat, self-detonation remained an option. Perhaps he could even inflict severe injury or death upon his opponent. In that moment, the position of the sage's foremost disciple would rightfully belong to him. Should he lose, he could merely reconstruct a clone. Should he win, he would become a disciple of the sage. The advantage lay with him. With this realization, Mingyi felt increasingly astute. Unlike Tai Ching, who had lost the courage to challenge in the discourse of Dao, he cast a disdainful glance at Tai Ching. With a swift flick of his tongue across his teeth, he provocatively addressed Tong Yi. What's the matter? Afraid? At that moment, the 3,000 mighty beings finally reacted, erupting in astonishment. Their eyes widened, gazing at Mingyi with expressions of admiration, surprise, or even ridicule. To many of these powerful beings, Tai Ching's breakthrough to the mid-stage of Quasi-Saint had positioned him above all in discourse and strength. Yet, he had bowed in submission to Hun Yuan Daoist, and thus, no one dared to question the status of Hun Yuan's foremost disciple. Not to mention, the position of the second disciple of the saint seemed solely reserved for Tai Ching. However, Mingyi's actions were entirely unconventional. He directly adhered to the rules set by the Dao ancestor, bypassing Tai Ching to challenge Hun Yuan. Realizing this, the many great beings brightened with understanding. None of them were fools. They quickly grasped Mingyi's plan, meticulously pondering it in their minds. Soon, they displayed expressions of incredulity. For it seemed there was nothing fundamentally flawed in Mingyi's scheme. It should be noted that the power of his self-detonating avatar, at close range, left no one present daring to claim they could withstand it. Furthermore, during this discourse, Mingyi's aura had grown increasingly enigmatic. It was quite possible he had also achieved a breakthrough. If so, it was feared that no one beneath the saint could withstand him. Perhaps the position of the saint's foremost disciple would indeed fall into Mingyi's hands. With this thought, the expressions of the 3,000 mighty beings grew complex, and an uncanny silence enveloped the grand hall. I have declared, to challenge Brother Hun Yuan, you must first pass my test. Tai Ching, who had swiftly comprehended the implications of the situation, wore a dark expression. His seemingly murky eyes now radiated a fierce, killing intent directed at Mingyi. Hun Yuan Daoist possessed his path to sanctification. Tai Ching was willing to concede to being Hun Yuan's foremost disciple, but if Mingyi were to succeed, the very notion of Mingyi becoming the foremost disciple filled Tai Ching with discomfort and dread. Even considering a hypothetical scenario where Mingyi did not win, Hun Yuan might suffer grievous harm, potentially jeopardizing Tai Ching's own chances of sanctification. Therefore, he resolutely refused to allow such a scenario to transpire. Yet, in the face of Tai Ching's overwhelming quasi-saint pressure, Mingyi remained unfazed, a smirk of derision deepening on his lips. He calmly remarked, the assessment is determined by the saint. What? Do your words outweigh the saint's? Upon hearing this, Tai Ching's aura faltered. How could he dare to respond to such a statement? Yet, if he allowed Mingyi to proceed unchecked, he truly could not bear to contemplate the consequences. No matter what, today, regardless of the circumstances, the priority is to resolve the matter with Mingyi. A glimmer of ruthlessness flashed in Tai Ching's eyes. Simultaneously, his mind stirred, as he intended to summon his hidden trump card, aiming to eliminate Mingyi with a decisive strike. No worries. You may return to your seat. At that moment, a hand gently rested on Tai Ching's shoulder. The calm and unhurried voice left Tai Ching momentarily stunned. In the next instant, he saw Tong Yi step forward, blocking his view and confronting Mingyi directly. Senior brother, you have witnessed this fiend's capabilities. He intends to use his innate clone to perish alongside you. Tai Ching, filled with urgency, feared that Hun Yuan might act impulsively and quickly spoke up. Concisely, he articulated Mingyi's intentions, hoping to dissuade Hun Yuan from engaging. However, the next moment, Tai Ching did not witness Hun Yuan retreat. Instead, he received an ambiguous 6-word response. I command you to return to your seat. You. Tai Ching felt a surge of anxiety, his mind racing with thoughts. He even contemplated bypassing Hun Yuan and delivering a strike. Yet, upon observing Hun Yuan's inscrutable figure, Tai Ching took a deep breath, striving to regain his composure, and turned back to his meditation mat. Come forth. I shall remain here. Do as you wish. At that moment, Tong Yi, with indifferent eyes, addressed the surging Mingyi softly. Behold. With those words, the assembly of mighty beings erupted in chaos. Mingyi's eyes glinted with malice. Chapter 100. A pat on the shoulder, and Mingyi is annihilated? Arrogant. Mingyi glared at the white-clad youth standing before him, his eyes ablaze with fury. The malevolent energy radiated from him uncontrollably. Since his emergence, who had not avoided him? He never anticipated that today, this Hun Yuan Taoist would dare to exhibit such audacity in his presence. You stand there, and I shall do as I please. Very well. Initially, he had contemplated leaving him a complete corpse. However, it now appeared entirely unnecessary. What nonsense about being a disciple of a saint. You shall meet your demise. What a farcical display. Just watch. Mingyi's rage surged, his wrath boiling over, and ominous words squeezed through his clenched teeth. With that, he vanished and reappeared before Tong Yi, extending his arms to seize him tightly. Simultaneously, a terrifying power erupted from within him. His body began to expand dramatically. A bizarre bloodlight pierced through his flesh and robes, saturating the entire hall. The blinding crimson glow enveloped Tong Yi entirely in an instant. Mingyi, you madman. This is the sacred ground of the saints. How dare you? It's madness, utter madness. Why did you accept this lunatic's challenge, Hun Yuan Taoist? Run. The moment the crimson light manifested, chaos erupted within the grand hall. All the mighty beings, who moments ago were in astonishment at the audacity of the primordial Taoist to accept the challenge from the River of Oblivion, were caught off guard by the swiftness and decisiveness of the latter's actions. With a mere declaration of self-detonation, the River of Oblivion acted. At such close proximity, the 3,000 powerful entities were seized by terror, their scalps tingling in fear. Each hastily summoned their treasures, fleeing towards the great doors. Those seated in the front rows, too distant from the exit, scrambled towards the back of the Tao platform. Even the 3 pure ones, seated upon their 6 lotus cushions, as well as Niu Hua and the guiding figures, instinctively vacated their seats, retreating behind the Tao platform. To them, it was evident that although the saints atop the platform were in deep meditative states, they were undoubtedly aware of the turmoil unfolding in the hall. As long as they sheltered behind the saints, no matter how fearsome the River of Oblivion's explosion might be, they would remain unscathed. Simultaneously, a sense of regret filled their hearts. They deemed the primordial Taoist overly confident, with the River of Oblivion's embrace leading to self-detonation. It was a certainty that soon there would be nothing left. Saint, please save my senior brother, cried Tai Ching as he crouched behind the Tao platform, his voice hoarse with urgency. His heart was a tempest of anxiety, coupled with a burgeoning self-reproach and disdain for his own foolishness. The self-reproach stemmed from the belief that he should have acted decisively, mirroring the River of Oblivion's boldness. Had he simply executed the River of Oblivion earlier, would they have found themselves in such dire straits? The disdain was naturally directed at the primordial Taoist, who he believed had some grand design in allowing him to resume his position. And yet, what was the result? This explosion from the River of Oblivion posed a threat even to those in the mid-stage of the quasi-saint realm. The primordial was doomed this time. Curse it. My chance to attain sainthood. In that moment, Tai Ching could only pray fervently, hoping that Hong Jun would intervene to save the primordial Taoist. Yet, to his mounting frustration, the saints on the Tao platform remained as steadfast as a mountain, seemingly oblivious to the unfolding events. The only ones still present were Hao Yin and Yao Qi, their expressions fraught with concern and anxiety. Each held a rotating purple light array disc, the very array disc of the Purple Sky Palace. Witnessing the scene before them, even their usual trust in their senior brother faltered. Just as Hao Yin and Yao Qi were on the verge of activating the grand array amidst the tumult, a faint sound resonated through the air. Astonishingly, at the moment the sound emerged, the blood-red light that had suffused the grand hall dissipated instantaneously. The ominous aura of death that had threatened everyone came to an abrupt halt. Startled, the 3,000 powerful beings felt a jolt in their hearts, turning instinctively to gaze in the direction of the sound. In the next instant, they were left utterly speechless, their faces etched with disbelief. There stood the primordial Taoist, still in place, his right hand resting upon the shoulder of the River of Oblivion. Yet, somehow, the River of Oblivion had loosened his grip, stepping back 2 paces, his form restored to its original appearance. However, it was evident. The look of horror on the face of the River of the Underworld was no less than theirs, perhaps even surpassing it. It was as if he had stumbled upon something utterly terrifying. His crimson eyes were filled with dread, fixed intently on Tong Yi. He seemed eager to speak, Yet only a few indistinct sounds escaped his throat. It's all right, take a deep breath. The first time is always like this. Tong Yi produced a white handkerchief from seemingly nowhere, wiping his hands as he softly reassured the river of the underworld. His tone was imbued with a soothing warmth, reminiscent of a gentle spring breeze, yet in this context, it felt chilling and uncanny. As his words fell, the river of the underworld seemed to lose all vitality, his body collapsing like a figure made of clay. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to a pile of white ash. Then, as if summoned from nowhere, a breeze arose, swirling the ashes into the air, causing them to dissipate. Silence enveloped the grand hall, plunging it into an eerie stillness. The 3,000 powerful beings who had witnessed the entire spectacle were struck with shock, their bodies frozen in disbelief. What just happened? The celestial beings of the Haotian Yaoqi stood in stunned silence, exchanging bewildered glances, utterly perplexed by the unfolding events. Their voices shattered the stillness, awakening the 3,000 powerful beings once more. In the next moment, the entire hall erupted in chaos. Where is the river of the underworld? Is he dead? Wasn't he supposed to self-destruct? Why has it stopped? Did he falter, or was it the actions of the primordial Taoist? What did he say before his demise? What does it mean, you saint? Hiss. Is this the power of the saint's foremost disciple? Before him, there was no chance for self-destruction? All the powerful beings exclaimed in shock, their gazes filled with terror and awe directed at Tong Yi. They struggled to comprehend the events that had transpired before them, although they were mere steps away, and had distinctly felt the overwhelming power of the river of the underworld's impending self-destruction. In the next instant, it had all vanished, along with the river himself. Yet they failed to grasp how the primordial Taoist had executed such a feat. If actions could be observed, they had only seen one, a simple pat on the shoulder. Could it be that such a gesture had retracted the river of the underworld's destructive power? And what of the vanished river? How could this be possible? He had seemingly patted my shoulder as well. The several powerful beings hiding behind the Dao platform were filled with dread. Tai Ching instinctively reached for his shoulder, as if Tong Yi's hand still lingered there. In that instant, goosebumps erupted across his body, his hair standing on end. He thought to himself, how perilous. Is there anyone else daring to challenge me? At that moment, Tong Yi's clear voice rang out. Though soft, it swiftly suppressed the cacophony within the grand hall. The hearts of the 3,000 powerful beings raced in response. One by one, they raised their trembling hands, twisting their rigid necks in shock, desperately shaking their heads. Death. Hurry and shake. It's the 100th chapter. How delightful. Let us keep going. Chapter 101. Shattering the river of the underworld, the celestial and earthly Linglong Tower. Ding. Successfully shattered the peak avatar of the ancestor of the river of the underworld. Ding. Received the feedback of the blood god sun avatar. As the notifications resonated in his mind, Tong Yi, though curious about the utility of this divine power, found himself bereft of time to investigate. The chaos within the purple cloud hall demanded immediate restoration to order. Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge me? Tong Yi inquired, standing firm. Adorned with what he believed to be a gentle smile, his gaze sweeping around the hall. The cacophony abruptly ceased. The 3,000 mighty beings fervently shook their heads. Each individual who met Tong Yi's gaze responded with frantic nods, as if they were playing a game of rhythmic drums. Even the several formidable figures who had stealthily emerged from behind the Dao platform, including the three purities, mirrored this sentiment. At that moment, their eyes reflected a reverent fear towards Tong Yi, perceiving a gaping maw concealed beneath his radiant smile. The brighter his smile grew, the colder and more chilling their hearts felt. Challenge. What folly. The river of the underworld lacked even the qualification for self-detonation. They were even more cowardly, unable to comprehend what had transpired. Who would dare to touch the tiger's whiskers? The position of the saint's foremost disciple? We would rather forego it. Brother, I was mistaken. You are always right. It dawned on Yuan Shi, as Tong Yi's gaze swept past him, that a great weight had been lifted from his heart, rendering him utterly relieved. He hurriedly conveyed a message to Tai Ching, his tone imbued with the sincerity and luck of one who has narrowly escaped disaster. Just moments ago, Yuan Shi had been on the brink of terror. It must be noted that the only provocateur of the primordial Taoist, apart from the river of the underworld, was himself. And what of the river of the underworld now? It had long since scattered like the wind, leaving the entire hall in its wake. Had he not been flung away by Tai Ching, would his fate have been any better than that of the river of the underworld? Yuan Shi believed not. After all, the river of the underworld had avatars. He did not. Even face-to-face self-detonation led to such a fate. He surmised that before he even had the chance to act, the primordial Taoist would have already patted him on the shoulder. Thus, he now directed his gratitude towards Tai Ching. Initially, he felt utterly humiliated when Tai Ching struck him publicly, failing to comprehend the reasoning behind it, which had sown seeds of resentment in his heart. Yet, upon witnessing the events unfold, All feelings of resentment and misunderstanding dissipated, carried away like the river of the underworld. We are brothers. Tai Ching awkwardly removed his hand from Yuan Shi's shoulder, gesturing dismissively. As for knowing in advance, what nonsense. He pondered whether, had he known better, he would still have called out for help to the sage in such a frantic manner, his voice now hoarse from the effort. Did he not care for his dignity? Yet, all of this, too clear, he would not articulate. In his heart, what began as a mere flattery towards the Hunyuan Taoist, motivated by status and opportunity, had now evolved into a profound sense of reverence. Observing everyone shaking their heads vigorously, Tong Yi finally nodded in agreement, satisfaction evident on his visage. He felt a sense of relief. Having just invoked the system, should someone foolishly challenge him at this moment, the outcome would be uncertain. Given that no one had stepped forth, he encouraged them to continue their discourse and challenges. With 6 slots available, Tong Yi concluded and, with a subtle movement, returned to the Dao platform. The onlookers, upon hearing his words, awkwardly resumed their seats. At this moment, feeling the chill beneath them, many powerful beings felt a wave of embarrassment wash over them as they recalled their earlier panic. What a disgrace for Tai Rumu. Who would dare engage me in discourse? Fortunately, at that moment, Tai Ching, having reclaimed his seat on the mat, rose once more to address them. It was you again. Tai Ching, with an audacity so thick that you swiftly regained your composure. Do not think I did not hear your voice crack earlier. As for engaging in discourse, I would be a fool to do so. The 3,000 powerful beings regarded Tai Ching, their internal murmurs echoing, the earlier embarrassment now dissipating. Very well. If none wish to engage in discourse, do any of my fellow Taoists dare to challenge me? Tai Ching surveyed the silent hall and continued speaking. As he spoke, the aura of his mid-stage quasi-saint cultivation surged forth from him. Simultaneously, a petite golden pagoda materialized, hovering above his head. This diminutive tower, now reduced to the size of a foot, boasted 9 tiers, its entire form gleaming with an enigmatic golden radiance. The emergence of this tower intensified Tai Ching's already formidable mid-stage quasi-saint presence, making it even more profound and stable. The expressions of the 3,000 powerful beings transformed dramatically. Facing Tai Ching felt akin to confronting an insurmountable mountain. They promptly suppressed the restlessness that had begun to stir within them. There is but one Mingi. They were not madmen. Thank you, esteemed Taoists, Tai Ching remarked, a satisfied smile gracing his lips. He then adjusted his Taoist robe and slightly bowed to Tong Yi on the Dao platform, saying, Tai Ching pays respects to my senior brother. On the Dao platform, Tong Yi's gaze fell upon the small golden pagoda above Tai Ching's head. The system panel flickered to life, revealing, name, Heavenly Yellow Linglong Tower, grade, merit spiritual treasure, details, as Panga separated heaven and earth. Heaven is of a profound hue, and earth is of a yellow shade. The dual energies of heaven and earth, combined with a portion of Panga's merit, have formed this treasure, capable of both confinement and offense, as well as defense. No wonder Tai Ching displayed such composure in the face of the imminent explosion of the Nether River. He had concealed such a remarkable artifact. It turns out to be a merit spiritual treasure. Observing the information presented on the system panel, Tong Yi felt an inexplicable itch in his right hand. Not only does it excel in both offense and defense, but it also possesses the ability to ensnare foes. He mused that he would seize the opportunity to borrow this treasure from Tai Ching for his own use. Yet, his expression remained unchanged. He merely inclined his head slightly towards Tai Ching and proclaimed, in that case, among the 6 disciples, Tai Ching claims 1. Let us proceed. Instantly, 1 slot diminished. All the mighty beings grew tense in an instant. Soon after, some began to imitate Tai Ching's example, rising to reveal their hidden cards, vying for the 2nd slot despite facing 3,000 challengers. However, not everyone possesses the prowess of Tai Ching. Those of lesser strength found themselves either rendered speechless in debates or their treasures dimmed in brilliance by others. Those with greater strength, even if victorious in debate, found their treasures and abilities unable to withstand the onslaught of 3,000. Fortunately, the fate of the Nether River served as a warning. The 3,000 mighty beings refrained from employing lethal force, with most merely skimming the surface of their capabilities. Yet, a few distinguished themselves among the throng of 3,000. They not only held their own in debates, but also withstood the relentless challenges of 3,000 without faltering. Before long, aside from Tai Ching, the remaining 5 slots were filled. Chapter 102. Establishing the 6 disciples of the Xianmen, Jane and Junti were in despair. Time flew by. Following Tai Ching's acquisition of the first slot, the other 5 recipients gradually emerged. The primordial Taoist revealed his initial stage of quasi-saint cultivation, holding the 3 treasures Jade Rui, firmly seated on his mat. Every spell and divine ability that approached him was swiftly and decisively shattered. Thus, he claimed the 2nd slot. the Tontian Taoist demonstrated his initial stage of quasi-saint cultivation. Wielding the Qingping sword, stepping upon formations, his movements ethereal. Each spell and divine ability that came his way was skillfully neutralized by his swordplay. He secured the third slot. Nuwa showcased her initial stage of quasi-saint cultivation, holding the precious lotus lamp, its radiant light enveloping her, incinerating every spell and divine ability entirely. She seized the fourth slot. Jane revealed his initial stage of quasi-saint cultivation as a 12-petal golden lotus of merit manifested beneath him, shining brightly. No spell or divine ability could shake the golden lotus in the slightest. He attained the fifth slot. Zhuan-Ti displayed his initial stage of quasi-saint cultivation, holding the seven-treasure wonderful tree. Every spell and divine ability was engulfed by the multicolored radiance, vanishing without a trace. Yet, he bore a concealed ailment, nearly unable to withstand the challenge. At the critical moment, the manifestation of the divine form was unleashed. One could behold a resplendent golden figure, adorned with 18 arms and 24 heads. Each hand grasped a sacred implement, a vajra, a precious file, a golden bell, a golden bow, a silver spear, and various other treasures. Each artifact was indeed a postnatal treasure. Under the auspices of these relics and the golden body's empowerment, Zhuan-Ti successfully secured the sixth quota, albeit with some trepidation. Thus, the 6 positions were firmly established. Yet, at this juncture, the entire hall succumbed to an inexplicable atmosphere. Every formidable being wore a look of astonishment, their brows furrowed, their gazes fixed intently upon the 6 individuals who had attained the quotas. For it was evident to all that, including the venerable Taiching Laozu, the 6 positions had been claimed by those seated upon the 6 meditation cushions. Moreover, each of them had evidently broken through to the early stages of quasi-sainthood without anyone realizing when this transformation occurred. The assembly of 3,000 powerful beings. After the third lecture, despite gaining profound insights, found their enlightenment paled in comparison to the first 2 teachings. Consequently, most remained trapped at the pinnacle of the Deluo realm. Faced with the 6 who had ascended to quasi-sainthood, their theoretical knowledge and practical experience were, naturally, insufficient. Was this mere coincidence? Or was it a predetermined fate? It became clear that those 6 meditation cushions represented the greatest opportunity. Indeed, their early entry into quasi-sainthood was attributable to those very cushions. Alas, had I known this beforehand, I should have fought for one of those cushions. The thought that the shameless Ji Ying and Zhuan-Ti had surpassed us in cultivation and would soon become disciples of a saint filled my heart with distress. You feel distressed? Have you considered that someone obtained a cushion and willingly relinquished it? Soon, the 3,000 great beings, having regained their composure, began to murmur among themselves. Their faces a canvas of regret and unwillingness. In their hearts, they felt an overwhelming sense of error. If only they had disregarded everything, even employing secret techniques to infiltrate. Perhaps they could have claimed one of those cushions. Perhaps they too could have swiftly broken through to quasi-sainthood. Perhaps they could have stood against 3,000 today and secured a place as a disciple of a saint. Yet, in this world, how many possibilities truly exist? However, some were acutely aware of their own limitations. Rather than lamenting for themselves, they turned their gaze towards the back row, where the venerable Han Yun sat. Their eyes filled with a profound sense of nostalgia. These individuals had all, to varying degrees, received assistance from Han Yun. They could not help but wonder, had Han Yun not relinquished that cushion, might he not have claimed one of the 6 positions today? In contrast to Ji Ying and Zhuan-Ti, should Han Yun become a disciple of a saint, they would undoubtedly extend their heartfelt congratulations. After all, Han Yun was a truly benevolent soul. Even upon attaining the status of a saint's disciple, he would surely continue to offer them warmth and support. Yet, to their astonishment, there was not a trace of regret or resentment on Han Yun's countenance. Yet, there was a hint of regret in his expression. What could be the reason for this? Who was Han Yun lamenting for? Unbeknownst to them, at that moment, Han Yun had just concluded a transmission with Zhen Yuanzi. The person he felt sorrow for was precisely Zhen Yuanzi. In Han Yun's perspective, had Zhen Yuanzi accepted the challenge and engaged in a debate, as the pioneer of the Earth Immortal cultivation path, would his Tao not triumph? Han Yun believed that Zhen Yuanzi's cultivation was on par with that of Ta Qing. As for the notion of defending against 3,000 opponents, Han Yun was even more convinced that Zhen Yuanzi would prevail. Once the Earth scripture was unveiled, enveloped by the protective membrane of the Earth, even the mightiest of the 3,000 beings would find it arduous to breach such defenses. Therefore, in Han Yun's eyes, if Zhen Yuanzi desired to become a disciple of a saint, it would be an effortless endeavor. What filled him with regret, however, was Zhen Yuanzi's unwillingness to lower his stature. He possessed his own pride, believing himself to be of the same era as Han Jun, perhaps even the one who first established the Earth Immortal cultivation method. To be able to attend the teachings was already a display of humility. As for becoming a disciple, regardless of Hong Yun's attempts at persuasion, even with the allure of the opportunity for sanctification, Xinyuanzi remained unmoved. By this time, everything had settled into place, and all Hong Yun could do was sigh for this confidant. Yet, he failed to notice that Emperor Jun had been secretly observing him, his golden pupils concealing a sinister bitterness beneath their surface. Esteemed guests, in light of this, the 6 slots shall be finalized. As the crowd in the great hall buzzed with murmurs and whispers, Tong Yi's voice resonated from the Dao platform, echoing throughout the hall. We pay our respects to the senior brother. The 6 individuals seated on the mat rose in unison to bow to Tong Yi, each trembling slightly, their faces betraying their uncontainable joy. Witnessing this, the 3,000 great beings let out a collective sigh. Subsequently, they dared not voice any dissent, rising to bow respectfully towards the Dao platform, declaring, "We are in agreement." Observing the delight of the 3 pure ones and the despondency of the 3,000 great beings, Tong Yi maintained his composure, though his eyes revealed no sign of disturbance. He had long foreseen this outcome. The many great beings were only now beginning to grasp certain truths, but it was too late. The disparity between those on the mat and the 3,000 would commence today, steadily widening until they were irrevocably divided, akin to clouds and mud. Once they attained sainthood, today's peers would inevitably bow their heads and address them as juniors in the future. Reflecting on this, he cast a glance at the back row where Hong Yun and Emperor Jun were situated, taking note of their expressions. Tong Yi felt a sense of helplessness. Hong Yun's heart truly seemed vast. Even as he faced impending calamity, he remained oblivious to Emperor Jun's unusual demeanor. Yet, he had already advised Hong Yun. If he chose not to heed the warning, so be it. Curiosity piqued, one wonders whether Dijuan, bereft of Kuanpeng's assistance, could vanquish Hong Yun. Upon reflection, it seems he had indirectly aided Hong Yun long ago. Dismissing these thoughts, Tong Yi turned towards Dao Zu and, with an air of resignation, spoke, "Master, awaken. It is time to conclude." Yet internally, he mused, "Enough of this charade, old man." As his words fell silent, Hongjun Daozu slowly opened his eyes, and the oppressive aura of the sage enveloped the grand hall once more. The 3 purities faced a rigorous dual assessment, thus qualifying as inner disciples, while Nuwa's evaluation, albeit slightly flawed, designated her as an outer disciple. Conversely, the evaluations of Jane and Junti were riddled with errors, relegating them to the status of registered disciples. In the next moment, the voice of the sage resonated in the ears of the 3,000 great beings, leaving them momentarily stunned. The 3 purities rejoiced. Nuwa experienced a mixed sense of joy, while the already gaunt faces of Jane and Junti contorted in despair, on the brink of tears. Chapter 103. Dong Wanggong's reproach of the 2 sages, preparations for division of treasures in the Purple Cloud Palace. Hongjun Daozu had just declared the identities of 6 disciples. The 3,000 great beings were momentarily taken aback, having anticipated that all 6 would share equal status. To their surprise, distinctions between inner, outer, and registered disciples emerged. Did this not imply that even the esteemed 3 purities, as inner disciples, were still inferior to the personally taught disciple, Hunyuan? Indeed, the sage favored Hunyuan above all else. However, upon further contemplation, the 3,000 great beings chose to dismiss such thoughts. Firstly, this matter bore no relevance to them. Secondly, they found delight in Jane and Junti being designated as the least esteemed disciples. While the 3,000 great beings were elated, there were others who were not. Suddenly, 2 wails echoed through the hall, and the onlookers beheld Jane and Junti kneeling on the ground, crying out, "Master, we wish to draw closer to you. Please, show us mercy. Would it be acceptable to classify us as outer disciples?" Witnessing the 2 sages lamenting with such fervor, the 3,000 great beings wore expressions of disdain. With a dismissive turn of their heads, they sighed inwardly, "Here we go again." They had hoped that after millennia, these 2 shameless individuals would have tempered their antics and preserved some semblance of dignity. Yet, today they were back to their theatrics. And how swiftly they had shifted their tone. The sage had just announced their statuses, and already they were calling him master? Truly, they had no shame. "We did not weep when we were not chosen as disciples of the sage. How can you 2 be so quick to cry?" they thought. "Be grateful for what you have." Nevertheless, as they pondered this, a sense of admiration crept into their hearts. One must admit, the acting prowess of the 2 sages was extraordinary, able to weep at will without any preamble. If someone were to assert that these 2 individuals could comprehend the laws of the future and even attain the sanctity of the sages, they would harbor no doubts whatsoever. Merely contemplating the possibility that these 2 are already disciples of the sages, and that they might indeed become saints in the future, evokes a shiver down the spines of the 3,000 formidable beings. The thought of addressing these 2 as juniors in such a scenario sends a chill through their hearts. How audacious! The sacred grounds of the sages, the Zixiao Palace, cannot tolerate such tumult. At that moment, a cold and haughty rebuke rang out, silencing the intolerable wails of the two. Upon turning their gaze, the crowd was surprised to find that it was not the celestial youths of Hao Yin Yaoqi who spoke, but rather the recently appointed inner disciple, the primordial Taoist. Were it not for the Master's compassion towards the beings of the West, how could such individuals gain entry to the profound gates? The disdain in the eyes of the primordial Taoist was unabashed, his expression reflecting a deep sense of misfortune associated with the two. In his view, while Nuwa and Fushi fell short, they possessed some degree of innate talent and enlightenment, ranking just below the three pure ones, whom he begrudgingly accepted. However, what were these two, Jane and Junti? Disheveled and emaciated. They had clawed their way to their current status through deceit and cunning. In his estimation, being designated as named disciples was a blessing for these two, and yet they remained unsatisfied. It was precisely because the primordial Taoist perceived that their senior brother, the Hunyuan Taoist, also harbored disdain for these two that he chose this moment to rise and chastise them. Having previously provoked their senior brother with his audacity, he now sought to recover some semblance of goodwill as the third disciple. Thus, this was indeed the opportune moment. By rebuking Jane and Junti, he could demonstrate his sincere apologies to his senior brother while simultaneously obstructing the two. Should he manage to expel them entirely from the profound gates, that would be a triumph. What? Being named disciples is not enough? Do you aspire to become direct disciples? With these thoughts in mind, the primordial Taoist unleashed his formidable powers against Jane and Junti, casting a glance at Tong Yi on the Tao platform, his eyes filled with respect and mirth. Only then did he sit down, satisfied. On the Tao platform, Tong Yi was left in a state of bewilderment. What was this nonsensical turn of events? What did the primordial Taoist's gaze signify? Was he suggesting that my position should be handed over to Jane and Junti? Was he so audacious? Very well, primordial. Remember this. At that moment, another resounding voice echoed. The primordial Taoist speaks true. These two shameless individuals, having become named disciples of the profound gates, are already beneficiaries of the sage's mercy. Yet, their greedy hearts yearn for more. I propose to strip them of their identities, allowing the disciples to recommend themselves as candidates for the status of named disciples of the Xianmen. As soon as this suggestion was made, the 3,000 formidable beings turned their gaze towards the source of the voice, eager to discern who possessed such audacity and shamelessness. To suggest such a thing and even self-recommend? How brazen. The once uncertain Jane and Puti, chastised by Yuanshi, now felt a surge of indignation upon hearing this voice. All those kneeling simultaneously turned their heads to look back. In the next moment, the crowd beheld the speaker, clad in a luxurious brocade robe, radiating pure yang energy. Who else could it be but the Eastern Prince? At that moment, the Eastern Prince paid no heed to the gazes of the onlookers. After addressing Hong Jun at the Tao platform, he maintained his respectful posture while turning his gaze towards Tong Yi. His eyes blinked with a glimmer of ambition and flattery. The Eastern Prince, having contended for 6 slots, regrettably fell short due to his lack of strength. Witnessing Jane and Puti's success, yet remaining unsatisfied, the Eastern Prince was already consumed with jealousy. When he saw Yuanshi reprimanding Jane and Puti, and afterward bowing to Hunyuan Taoist, he was quick to conclude that he had deciphered the unspoken communication between Yuanshi and Hunyuan Taoist. Surely, Hunyuan Taoist must disdain Jane and Puti, prompting Yuanshi to speak up. In light of this, as the individual among the 3,000 great beings closest to Hunyuan Taoist, how could he remain silent? Thus, he followed Yuanshi's lead to voice his criticism. Simultaneously, he harbored ulterior motives, hoping to persuade Hunyuan Taoist to remove Jane and Puti, allowing him and the Western Queen Mother to take their places. How fortuitous. Jane and Puti made a pair, and he and the Western Queen Mother would also form a pair. As for whether he would offend Jane and Puti, what was there to fear? His bond with Hunyuan Taoist was quite profound. Below the Tao platform, upon recognizing their nemesis Jane and Puti, a flicker of ruthlessness flashed in their eyes. They could not comprehend it. Throughout their lives, they had seized and deceived many, but never had they encountered such treachery from the Eastern Prince, who had already owed them a debt of gratitude. Yet, at this moment, he chose to repay kindness with enmity? Very well, Eastern Prince, just wait. On the Tao platform, Tong Yi, witnessing this entire spectacle, felt utterly bewildered once more. What is this? After you berate Jane and Puti, you offer me a salute and exchange glances? What does this mean? However, Tong Yi soon grasped the situation. It turns out these individuals harbor a strong aversion towards Jane and Puti. Indeed, he himself detested the two, but that did not necessitate his involvement in this matter. In the Western world, the presence of saints in Buddhism is indispensable. It is a natural progression of events. Why meddle in the workings of karma when one is idle? Moreover, Can he truly dictate the role of the guiding figure? Ultimately, isn't it this old man beside him who holds the reins? The matter has been settled and requires no further discussion. At this moment, it felt as if the voice of the child echoed in the air. The voice of the saint resonated once more, decisively bringing this trivial farce to a close. The identity of the guiding figure was irrevocably established as that of a named disciple. The East King sighed, while the guiding figure expressed relief. Immediately, Hongjun shifted his tone, his words reverberating. I have achieved sainthood and shall soon retreat to comprehend the next realm. The treasures amassed over countless years are as mere dust. Today, I shall distribute them among you. Chapter 104. The distribution of primordial purple chi. What? Distributing treasures? How splendid. Thank you, Saint. We are deeply grateful. Initially, we believed that after the saint took disciples, our involvement would cease. Yet unexpectedly, an opportunity has arisen today. It is said that the saint once led the righteous alliance to vanquish demons, alongside many innate powers. Perhaps we might obtain their relics this time. Following the minor farce surrounding the guiding figure, the entire hall was filled with an atmosphere of joy. Almost every countenance radiated delight. Indeed, as the saying goes, without expectation, there comes surprise. They had planned to return home to consolidate their cultivation, but the saint's intention to distribute treasures changed everything. The saint's treasures, accumulated over countless years, could hardly be mediocre. How could this not ignite their excitement? I have placed the treasure distribution stone in the plaza outside the hall. You may go and examine it. Treasures will be available to those with the capability and fortune. Go forth, but the disciples of the mystical gate must remain here. At that moment, the voice of the saint echoed. The 3,000 powerful beings understood that this marked the final procedure. The saint was preparing to dismiss them. Yet, upon hearing the last words of the saint, a sense of reluctance welled up in the hearts of the 3,000, as the allure of the treasures seemed to diminish. The saint had chosen to retain the disciples of the mystical gate, signifying a clear distinction. How wonderful it would have been to join them. However, everything had already been predetermined. Becoming a powerful being is not for the timid. We express our gratitude to the saint. The 3,000 powerful beings rose in unison, bowing towards the Tao platform and exclaiming in unison. This bowing gesture marked the definitive conclusion of the three teachings. Well, the saint's voice remained indifferent yet acknowledged their reverence. The 3,000 powerful beings reluctantly surveyed the hall, as if imprinting every detail into their memories, for they understood that in all likelihood, they might never again have the opportunity to step into the hall of purple clouds. At last, all turned to depart, soaring out the grand doors. The celestial pool of Hao Ian also rose, gracefully bowing to Hongjun before understandingly gliding out. With the establishment of the Xianmen, distinctions in status became imperative. Celestial youths remained as celestial youths, while disciples of the Xianmen were recognized as such. The master had instructed that only the disciples of the Xianmen should remain, and they would certainly not err in their duties. Once the figure of the celestial pool of Hao Qian vanished, the great hall was left solely with the Tao ancestor and his 7 disciples. Salutations to our master. Tai Ching was the first to initiate, performing 3 bows and 9 kowtows before the Tao ancestor, Hongjun. He inwardly lamented the disruptive antics of Jian and Juanti, pondering that had it not been for these 2 shameless individuals, the master-disciple ceremony would have been completed by now. Yuan Shi salutes the master. Upon witnessing this, Yuan Shi, Tong Tian, Nuhua, and 3 others promptly emulated Tai Ching, bowing fervently before Hongjun in respectful homage. Well done. Once they had completed their ritual, they immediately felt an intangible yet irresistible force lifting them. The 6 were overjoyed, particularly Jian and Juanti, who nearly shed tears. Having completed the homage, their fates were now intertwined, and they could rest assured that no ill-intentioned individuals would seek to harm them. Nuhua's exquisite visage also radiated joy. Though she had remained silent when Yuan Shi reprimanded Jian and Juanti, she had wholeheartedly supported Yuan Shi's actions. After all, the 3 pure ones overshadowed her, and she harbored no objections. If Jian and Juanti were to stand alongside her as equals, she would surely feel displeased. Fortunately, with their identities established, she felt she had the upper hand over Jian and Juanti. Yuan Shi pays respects to the senior brother. Just as the others reveled in their newfound status and awaited their master's words, Yuan Shi unexpectedly performed another bow, this time directed at Tong Yi on the Tao platform. This action left the other 2 pure ones, Nuhua, Jian, and Juanti momentarily stunned, embarrassment evident upon their faces. Yuan Shi's gesture made them seem somewhat lacking in decorum. Even Tai Ching cast a sidelong glance at Yuan Shi, a hint of reproach in his gaze. Yet, they soon followed suit, collectively bowing to Tong Yi, proclaiming, "We pay our respects to the senior brother." On the Tao platform, Tong Yi appeared somewhat distracted. He waved his hand dismissively to the 6, languidly stating, We are all brothers. There is no need for excessive formality. In truth, his mind was not occupied with the proceedings within the grand hall, but rather with the treasures awaiting him outside. What was there to admire in such a ritual of apprenticeship? Buzz, buzz. At that moment, 7 resonant hums reverberated through the air as Hong Jun, with a swift wave of his sleeve, summoned the 7 strands of primordial purple chi that had been concealed above the hall, allowing them to gracefully descend and hover upon the Tao platform. The 3 pure ones and their companions gazed at this spectacle with wide eyes, astonishment and delight illuminating their expressions as they regarded the Tao ancestor, Hong Jun. This is the primordial purple energy of Hongmeng. At that moment, their master suddenly summoned it down. Could it be? As disciples of the Xianmen, they naturally bore significant responsibilities. This 6-fold primordial purple energy shall be bestowed upon you. Indeed, as soon as the thought arose within them, the voice of Hong Jun resonated in their ears. In the next instant, they trembled with excitement, gazing intently at the spectacle before them. 7 streams of primordial purple energy appeared as if possessing consciousness, 6 of which surged forth towards them. In the blink of an eye, each entered their foreheads, leaving behind a singular purple mark between their brows. We thank you, Master. We express our gratitude for the gift of primordial purple energy. The 6 from the 3 purities were so exhilarated that they nearly lost their ability to articulate. Bowing and thanking Hongjun Daozu, their voices trembling with emotion. It was no wonder they were so elated. Their master had previously stated that to achieve sanctification through the severance of the 3 corpses and the attainment of merit, one must possess primordial purple energy. In other words, without primordial purple energy, achieving sanctity would be impossible. Now, having just become disciples of the Xianmen, they had received primordial purple energy. In essence, they had already placed 1 foot in the realm of the saints. However, after expressing their gratitude, they were taken aback, for on the Tao platform, there remained a solitary stream of primordial purple energy, floating there forlornly. The 6 looked at the primordial purple energy and then turned to their elder brother, who bore no purple mark upon his brow. This indicated that their elder brother had not received the primordial purple energy. Moreover, recalling their master's earlier words, he had mentioned that after attaining sanctity, he had only found 7 streams of primordial purple energy throughout the vast wilderness. Was this one not to be bestowed upon their elder brother? Could it be that their master held some disfavor towards him? Chapter 105. The Taiji Diagram and the Panga Banner, the 4 swords of extermination reaching the heavens. He could not grasp the situation. Master, does our elder brother not desire the primordial purple energy? At this moment, Zhuanti voiced the question that lingered in his heart. His gaze fixated on the remaining stream of primordial purple energy, greed glimmering in his eyes. This substance was the foundation for achieving sanctity, even though he already possessed one. Who would ever find it excessive? In the future, it could be exchanged for treasures, yielding great profits. As soon as Zhuanti spoke, he received an elbow jab from Jiejing, signaling him to refrain from further commentary. The others were curious, yet no one else dared to inquire. Why must you be so indiscreet? Even in greed, can you not exercise restraint? Upon hearing Zhuanti's question, Hongjun Daozu turned his gaze towards the Tao platform, addressing Tong Yi. Do you wish for it? Upon hearing this, Tong Yi hastily waved his hands in refusal, his face a mask of rejection. This substance was akin to a hot potato. From the moment the primordial purple energy had manifested, it had been predetermined by the heavenly Tao, allocated to specific individuals. The 6 streams were designated for the 6 saints. The remaining opportunity is for the 3,000 powerful beings to seize and contend for. His emergence is, in fact, an anomaly, a serendipitous occurrence. He was never destined to be among them. Even if he aspires to attain sanctity through his primordial spirit, he must seek to evade one of the paths. That path aligns most fittingly with his unique nature. Should he acquire it, the implications for the heavenly order are inconsequential. It is akin to the last position on the divine ranking. When asked if he would take it, he would certainly refuse. Simultaneously, he harbors a sense of indignation. How dare you, Zhuanti, claim a path for yourself while dismissing the rest? Enough of this excessive talk. Naturally, Tong Yi concealed these sentiments. After declining with a wave of his hand, he merely cast a fleeting glance at Zhuanti and chose to say no more. This scene momentarily stunned the 6 individuals below the platform. Their gazes towards Tong Yi were filled with astonishment and confusion. He rejected the foundation for sanctification? Why? Is this a perilous endeavor? Your senior brother requires no primordial purple chi. Let this purple chi be given to someone more deserving. At that moment, Hong Jun's voice resonated. As soon as he finished speaking, the primordial purple chi lifted itself, swiftly escaping through the door. The 6 from the 3 pure ones turned their heads in unison, their eyes glimmering. They truly wished to speak up. Senior brother, do not take it. Grant it to us instead. Even if it is toxic, we would still accept it. However, since Hong Jun proclaimed it to be bestowed upon the fated, They dared not voice their objections. They could only hope that the master-disciple ceremony would conclude swiftly, allowing them to pursue it, perhaps still in time. Even if they could not catch the last trace of purple qi, they had already paid their respects and received the primordial purple qi. Their hearts were eager to venture forth and divide the treasures. Hong Jun observed the expressions of the six, and a quiet sigh escaped him. He previously regarded this mischievous monkey with disdain, yet these 6 new disciples did not exhibit much more gravitas. They were, after all, primordial beings, the very essence of Pangu. In the end, they were not even as composed as a mere monkey. Yet, there was no altering the inevitable tide of fate. Just as the 6 began to grow impatient, Hong Jun waved his sleeve once more, revealing 6 luminous orbs of diverse colors that descended before them. Since you have entered the mysterious realm, this is the Master's gift to you for your initiation. In an instant, the 3 pure ones and the 6 disciples retracted their thoughts, their eyes widening in astonishment as they gazed at the orbs hovering before them. Each orb exuded a distinct aura. Some radiated overwhelming malevolence, others were suffused with spiritual energy, and some even emanated an aura of merit. Nevertheless, one commonality among these 6 orbs was their resplendent brilliance, signifying their extraordinary rank. We express our profound gratitude to our esteemed master for bestowing these treasures. The 6, filled with exhilaration, promptly bowed deeply towards the platform. Immediately, one after another, they eagerly seized the radiant orbs, lowering their heads to discern their true forms. What is this? The Tai Chi diagram. Astonishingly, it is one of the 3 great treasures of the opening of heaven. The celestial master Ta Ching gazed at the palm-sized artifact in his hand, exclaiming in astonishment. The exterior manifested as a chaotic yin-yang symbol, enveloped by myriad beams of radiant light, continuously emanating an aura of virtue. Surrounding the diagram were the prophetic verses of the great Tao, while within, the symbols of heavenly principles subtly revealed themselves. At the moment of clarity, Ta Ching's eyes widened, his entire being trembling with excitement, joy radiating from him like that of a child. Just then, he heard a voice of amazement from his side. It was Yuan Shi. This is the Panga banner. Ta Ching turned to gaze, and the delight in his eyes intensified, almost overflowing. In Yuan Shi's grasp, the orb also unveiled its true nature, revealing a small banner pulsating with the essence of the opening of heaven. The banner was suffused with a chaotic, deep yellow hue, adorned with the script of the great Tao, resembling tadpole characters. The aura of the heavenly deities within seemed poised to annihilate chaos itself, surging forth uncontrollably. Even the essence of virtue could not conceal it. Indeed, it was the Panga banner. Splendid, splendid. This time, the 2 brothers have acquired 2 of the 3 great virtuous treasures. Ta Ching, witnessing Yuan Shi's exuberance, smiled and presented the Tai Chi diagram for Yuan Shi to admire. Upon seeing it, Yuan Shi grinned broadly. It must be noted that the 3 great treasures of the opening of heaven are incomparable to other virtuous artifacts. They were originally the divine axes of creation, which shattered under the immense pressure of a vast world after successfully opening the heavens, transforming into 3 fragments. Upon merging with the essence of the opening of heaven, they became the 3 virtuous treasures currently in their possession, the Tai Chi diagram and the Panga banner. The 3rd artifact lies in the hands of Tai Yi, the chaotic bell. Thousands of years ago, Yuan Shi had sought to seize Tai Yi's chaotic bell, recognizing it as one of the 3 great virtuous treasures. As manifestations of Pangu's primordial spirit, they were naturally inclined to possess it. Unexpectedly, though unable to obtain the chaotic bell, today they had acquired the other 2. Is this not a sign of destiny? Contemplating this, Ta Ching and Yuan Shi swiftly turned their gaze toward Tong Tian, eager to discover what treasure their fellow disciple had been granted by their master. However, upon looking, both were left astounded. A terrifying aura of malice surged forth. This is the treasure of the demonic sect, the 4 swords of extermination. Both Ta Ching and Yuan Shi exclaimed in unison. In Tong Tian's hand were 4 small swords, playfully dancing at his fingertips. Though seemingly shrunk to the size of fingers, they radiated a chilling, murderous intent. The aura of slaughter was so palpable that even Laozi and Yuan Shi felt a shiver race down their spines. Master, is this truly the 4 swords of extermination? They exclaimed. Such a lethal weapon of the demonic sect, surely Tong Tian cannot wield it. Upon discerning the 4 diminutive swords, Laozi and Yuan Shi hurriedly bowed towards the Tao platform. Calling out to Hong Jun, they struggled to comprehend why such a formidable weapon would be bestowed upon their younger brother. Chapter 106. The desire for control of Laozi and Yuan Shi. Laozi and Yuan Shi's exclamations startled Nuwa, Jin, and Juani, who were examining their own treasures. They swiftly stowed their possessions and turned their gazes towards Tong Tian. The sight of the 4 swords of extermination caused Nuwa, Jin, and Zhuanti to gasp in astonishment. The moment they laid eyes on the swords, an overwhelming aura of bloodlust surged forth, sending shivers through their very souls. Upon hearing the words of Laozi and Yuanshi, realization dawned upon them. The 4 swords of extermination? The artifact bestowed upon Brother Tongtian by our master is indeed the 4 swords of extermination. Although they had all emerged around the time of the Dragonhan calamity, they were still too weak to partake in the cataclysmic struggle of the demonic path. However, they never ceased to hear tales of that legendary battle, with the 4 swords of extermination etched most vividly in their memories. It was the demonic ancestor, Luoho, who had relied on these swords to dominate the righteous path, leading countless righteous beings to their demise. Ultimately, he faced off against 4 peak powers, including their master Hongjun. 1 against 4. Initially, they believed that the 4 swords of extermination must have been destroyed during that great conflict, but to their astonishment, they now witnessed their reemergence. And in such a manner, entrusted to Tongtian. If Tongtian were unable to master them, that would be one thing. Yet, if he could, who could stand against him in the future? Upon hearing Laozi and Yuanshi, Tongtian, who had been toying with the 4 swords, furrowed his brow, a hint of hesitation crossing his face. Having spent his youth alongside his 2 elder brothers, if they claimed he could not control these swords, perhaps it was indeed true. Yet, he found himself enamored with them. A sense of familiarity enveloped him upon their sight. The thought of declining the 4 swords of extermination left him reluctant. As he contemplated this, Tongtian bowed his head in silence. Tongtian cannot grasp them? What does that imply? Are they meant for your use? Will you be able to wield them? At that moment, a clear and resonant voice suddenly echoed forth. A glimmer of surprise illuminated Tongtian's starry eyes as he lifted his gaze. The other 5 below were equally taken aback, not anticipating a response to the inquiries posed by Laozi and Yuanshi. Their master, Hongjun, had yet to speak, but their eldest senior brother was the first to break the silence. At this moment, Tong Yi observed the expressions of the 6 individuals below the stage, feeling bored. He had finally found something intriguing, watching the future 6 saints secretly vie against one another. Witnessing Laozi and Yuanshi receiving the Tai Chi diagram and the Panga banner, they were filled with immense joy, without a thought of whether they could truly wield them. However, upon seeing Tongtian acquire the ominously powerful 4 swords of extermination, they immediately jumped in to assert that their 3rd brother could not control the swords. Such flawed reasoning. In this world, what truly exists that one cannot master? Treasures, whether virtuous or malevolent, celestial or demonic, are entirely dependent on their master. Laozi and Yuanshi were merely fearful, not of Tongtian's inability to control, but rather of his complete mastery. Would their 3rd brother still heed their words? In Tong Yi's eyes, Laozi and Yuanshi embodied pure desire for control. They wished to seize Tongtian's youthful spirit before it fully matured, much like many families in the past where parents could dominate their children as long as they remained unformed. Yet, once the children grew, such control became increasingly elusive. The reason Laozi and Yuanshi sought to dominate Tongtian was simple. There were only 7 individuals in the Xianmen. If the 3 brothers united, upon Hongjuan's retreat, the 3 pure ones would hold half the authority, provided Tongtian remained sufficiently obedient. They could surpass Nuwa and Jane, but not the eldest and 2nd eldest brothers. Contemplating this, Tong Yi looked at Tongtian and smiled, saying, "Listen to your eldest brother's words. As the saying goes, to buy osmanthus flowers and share wine is not like a youthful wanderer. The things we cherish are not always present. When you find something you like, cherish it." Upon hearing this, a spark of understanding illuminated Tongtian's starry eyes. "Indeed. Thank you, eldest brother, for the enlightenment. I truly admire the 4 swords of extermination." Tongtian nodded vigorously, his face devoid of any hesitation, as he declared with conviction, "Yes, my brother is right. Why overthink the things we love?" In the past, when he cherished something, his eldest and 2nd brothers disapproved, deeming it childish and forbidding him from partaking. Each time, he felt a lingering frustration that clouded his mind. Now, hearing his eldest brother's words, Tongtian recognized that he had been overly swayed by others' opinions. Cultivating the Tao and nurturing the heart should focus on one's own feelings. His elder brothers were not in the wrong, they merely followed their own paths. Why should he always heed their words? Furthermore, Tongtian found his eldest brother quite talented. Though he did not fully grasp the meaning behind the phrase about buying osmanthus and sharing wine, it felt remarkably profound. Does Master Brother have a fondness for wine? In that case, I must seek out some fine spirits for him. I express my gratitude to my esteemed master for bestowing upon me the 4 swords of extermination. I am truly enamored. With this thought in mind, Tongtian disregarded the knowing glances exchanged between Laozi and Yuanshi, and directly bowed to his master upon the Tao platform. Hongjun, the Tao ancestor, had been observing with a detached demeanor, but at this moment, he finally nodded and responded softly, These 4 swords were acquired from the hands of Nero. I perceive that you possess remarkable talents in both swordsmanship and formations, combined with a pure heart. Thus, in your hands, this instrument of slaughter does not amount to a wasteful act. Furthermore, the 4 swords of extermination originally included a sword formation. Regrettably, it suffered damage in battle. You may see if you can comprehend it yourself. Upon hearing his master's affirmation, Tong Tian felt a profound sense of clarity and enlightenment. He realized that Master Brother's earlier guidance was of great significance. As for the sword formation, he remained unconcerned. After playing with the 4 small swords, he was confident that he would quickly grasp the extermination sword formation. With this in mind, Tong Tian bowed once more, expressing heartfelt gratitude. Thank you, Master, and thank you, Master Brother. Good. There are no further matters for now. You may venture outside and see if you can obtain any opportunities from the fragmented treasure rock. On the Dao platform, Hongjun waved his hand, issuing a dismissal. The disciples complied without question. Laozi and Yuan Shi realized that they could not intervene, as both Master Brother and their master had spoken. What could they say? What could they dare to say? With reluctant bows, they turned and swiftly exited the grand hall. All right, Master, I shall take my leave as well. Tong Yi, unable to contain his impatience, called out to Hongjun before soaring towards the entrance. Midway through the air, he suddenly turned, hovering and gazing back at the Dao platform. Master, are you truly not going to keep me here and grant me some opportunities? Chapter 107. The God-slaying spearhead. Red Clouds obtained the primordial purple chi. What more do you desire? In response to Tong Yi's sudden halt and inquiry, Hongjun, the Dao ancestor, smiled without directly answering. Tong Yi scratched his head. He had just witnessed the treasures bestowed upon his 6 junior brothers and sisters. Though he maintained an outwardly calm demeanor, internally he was ablaze with excitement. The Taiji diagram. The Panga banner, the 4 swords of extermination. Each of these was among the most supreme treasures of the primordial realms. Alas, he understood that these treasures were intended for the 3 purities and others as tokens of their enlightenment. They would be of no use to outsiders. Thus, despite his fervent desire, he did not entertain any thoughts of claiming them for himself. However, what about the 6 treasures? He knew that his disciple had received the 12th grade pure world White Lotus, while he, at present, seemed to possess nothing. It felt unjust. Therefore, he continued to wait, hoping that after Hongjun finished bestowing treasures, he might also receive a gift. As the time has come for him to depart, he still refuses to comply. How infuriating. Now he even inquires about what I desire. If you wish to gift someone, do not ask. Just present it directly, Master. Do you not comprehend this simple principle? How can one pursue romantic interests without understanding such matters? It is no wonder they lack a matron. However, I find myself with but a single remnant. Would you like it? At that moment, Hongjun spoke again, his smile growing more pronounced. Yes, I certainly want it. Tong Yi's eyes sparkled as he nodded vigorously. While the Master's expression appeared rather peculiar, the promise of treasure rendered him unperturbed. A remnant? What of it? Did he not notice that the chaos clock, the Taiji diagram, and the Panga banner are all remnants? In that instant, a flash of crimson light pierced through the void, appearing directly before Tong Yi. Name, God-slaying spear, fragment. Grade, primal spirit treasure. Restrictions, 63 prohibitions of 7-9. Details, formed from the fusion of the stem of the shattered chaos Qinglian and the heavenly desolation Qi. It was later acquired by Luo Ho and damaged during the Dragon Han catastrophe. The system interface materialized immediately. Tong Yi, however, was left in a daze, staring blankly at the fragment that remained after the bloodlight receded, revealing only the size of a forearm, a spearhead. Indeed, merely a spearhead. What on earth? Is this the fragment you spoke of, Master? Tong Yi seized the spearhead, turning to voice his grievances to Hongjun, only to find the dais utterly deserted, devoid of any presence. I knew it. That old rascal's smile was rather strange. I thought it was something of great value, yet all I received was a spearhead. Tong Yi shook his head at the spearhead in his grasp. It is not that the god-slaying spear's head is inadequate. On the contrary, to be classified as a primal spirit treasure even in its incomplete state speaks volumes. One can only imagine its true magnificence in entirety. Yet the issue lies in the fact that it is a weapon, not a magical artifact. It is meant for direct combat. With only a head, how can one engage others? When foes approach, should I draw this and use it like a dagger? That seems exceedingly challenging. A fist would serve better. Buzz. As if sensing Tong Yi's disdain, the once dull spearhead erupted with renewed crimson brilliance. It quivered in his grasp, attempting to break free, expressing its discontent. Oh dear. Do not be upset. You are quite admirable. I harbor no ill will towards you. Once I master the art of forging, I shall restore you. Truth be told, I possess a celestial measuring ruler, which is quite formidable. Perhaps it can serve as your shaft. If you do not fancy it, are you familiar with the Panga banner? The entity possesses the aura of divine wrath, which I can also acquire for you. After a series of flattery and praise from Tong Yi, the god-slaying spear was finally pacified. He breathed a sigh of relief, stowing it away as he soared through the grand entrance. However, Tong Yi was taken aback as he stepped out of the purple cloud hall, greeted by a cacophony of voices that filled the air. The scene was more exaggerated than a bustling market of his past life. 3,000 individuals were engaged in a lively pursuit within the expansive hall, showcasing an array of extraordinary techniques and agility. Is this a game? What happened to the promised distribution of treasures? Tong Yi inquired of Haoyan Yaoqi, who stood at the entrance. The swiftness of these 3,000 formidable beings left him disinclined to employ the purple cloud divine eye. Someone questioned the need to squander celestial energy. Ah, senior brother, you have emerged. Upon hearing the familiar voice, Haoyan Yaoqi turned with delight. The Xianmen had unexpectedly gained 6 new disciples, all of whom were strangers to them. It was indeed a bit disconcerting. Yet, since the Sanqing and others had taken them under their wing, they dared not be remiss. Henceforth, they would all be addressed as senior brothers and sisters. Even the least among them, the nominal disciple Jijing Kuni, would have to refer to them as such, despite their reluctance. This notion left Haoyan Yaoqi feeling somewhat uneasy. However, upon the appearance of senior brother Tong Yi, their discomfort was alleviated. You two need not feel any unease. When you see them, simply greet them as senior brothers and sisters. If they treat you poorly, inform me directly. I shall address them, Tong Yi said, raising both hands to gently pat each of their shoulders. Unexpectedly, in response to his reassurance, the two of them stiffened instead of smiling. Haoyan Yaoqi slowly turned to observe the slender hand resting on his shoulder. His throat tightened as he swallowed hard. Senior brother, could you refrain from patting my shoulder? Haoyan dared not move, fixating on the hand on his shoulder, his voice tinged with a hint of distress. Recalling the fate of the River of Souls, they had vowed never to allow their senior brother to pat their shoulders again. What was to be done? Was his demise imminent? Why must senior brother pat his shoulder? Haoyan's mind was in turmoil. Yaoqi, too, though silent, felt tears welling in her eyes, plagued by self-doubt. Had she committed some error? Did senior brother no longer favor her, resulting in the shoulder pat? Tong Yi's ears perked up, and he soon discerned the inner thoughts of Haoyan Yaoqi. Realization dawned upon him, and he could not help but chuckle in exasperation. After all, with such a handsome and charming demeanor, he bore no semblance to a murderous demon. How could one resort to murder so easily? Is this satisfactory now? How could a brother who cares so deeply for you bear to harm you? He withdrew his hand, clutching his heart, appearing as if wounded. Such a scene elicited a smile from Haoyan Yaoqi, who laughed merrily. After their playful scuffle, the two celestial youths felt considerably better and began to recount the events to Tong Yi. Initially, they were merely queuing to divide treasures when suddenly a surge of primordial purple energy erupted. The square descended into chaos as they scrambled to seize that primordial essence. Who could have anticipated that regardless of their relentless pursuit, they could never catch it? Ultimately, it settled upon the shoulders of the Red Cloud, who, despite his reluctance, found himself pursued by the very essence he did not desire. The Red Cloud had no choice but to flee, while others continued to chase after the elusive purple energy, resulting in the current predicament. Each person at Haoyan Yaoqi spoke in turn, their tones imbued with a sense of helplessness and absurdity, providing Tong Yi with a general overview of the matter. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi sighed in realization. He understood that the Red Cloud would acquire the primordial purple energy, yet he never imagined it would unfold in such a manner. Suddenly, a crimson light flashed before Tong Yi and his companions, accompanied by an aged voice resonating in their ears. Hunyuan, my friend, please save me. Chapter 108. My senior brother can shatter the will of heaven with a single fist. Hunyuan, my friend, please save me. Before them stood the Red Cloud ancestor, who, upon landing, bowed to Tong Yi in desperation. The primordial purple energy promptly alighted upon his shoulder. Simultaneously, 3,000 figures descended behind the Red Cloud. They initially regarded Tong Yi with caution before turning their gazes toward the energy resting on Red Cloud's shoulder. Intriguingly, among the 3,000, the leaders were none other than the 3 Pure Ones and the 6 Realms. Red Cloud, my friend, this is an opportunity that many seek. Why do you refuse it? Moreover, considering it an opportunity, how can we even speak of saving you? Tong Yi, observing Red Cloud's face full of desperation, gently inquired. My friend, I do not know whether this item is a blessing or a curse. I only understand that I cannot bear the weight of this karma, Red Cloud lamented, attempting to dispel the primordial purple energy from his shoulder while pleading with Tong Yi. At that moment, Red Cloud was fraught with anxiety. Initially, he was elated to see the primordial essence resting upon him, believing fortune smiled upon him that day. Yet in the next instant, he beheld the 3,000 powerful beings, all of whom had been waiting to divide the treasures, turning their predatory gazes upon him. Even those whom he had previously aided could not conceal the glimmer of greed in their eyes. Beside him, Jin Yuanzi's countenance turned ashen as he grasped his arm, urging him to reject this opportunity, for accepting it would surely invite calamity. This prompted Hong Yun to resolutely decline the primordial purple energy. However, to his astonishment, the primordial purple energy clung to him like an unyielding adhesive, refusing to be cast off no matter how vigorously he struggled. Even in flight, it pursued him with relentless speed, as if transcending the very fabric of time and space, no matter how swiftly he moved. The primordial purple energy remained steadfastly at his heels. Additionally, the 3,000 great powers trailed closely behind, their gazes predatory and intent. In a moment of desperation, Hong Yun caught sight of the Hunyuan Daoist standing at the entrance of the Grand Hall. Remembering that the latter was the senior disciple of the Xianmin, he felt a glimmer of hope that assistance was at hand. However, the Daoist replied with a smile, "Oh, how do you know that if I aid you, I would not also incur a share of this impending disaster?" Upon hearing this, Hong Yun's anxious expression momentarily froze, only to be replaced by a dawning realization. Indeed, this was the foundation for attaining sainthood. Despite the Daoist being a disciple of a saint, the allure of this opportunity had ensnared the greed of the 3,000 great powers without pretense. Should this information leak, even the reclusive innate powers might emerge from their seclusion, waiting for the right moment. Such a scenario could potentially endanger the Hunyuan Daoist. Recognizing the Daoist's kindness and the absence of any covetous intent in his demeanor, akin to that of Hutu, Hong Yun felt a pang of guilt for seeking his help, inadvertently endangering him. A sigh escaped his lips as he pondered his fate. Since the purple energy had chosen him, he decided to accept it. He resolved to slip into the chaos unnoticed and remain in seclusion henceforth. If he were to achieve sainthood, that would be splendid. If not, the purple energy would not be disseminated, sparing others from its peril. Having come to this conclusion, Hong Yun bowed deeply to Tong Yi, his voice laden with regret. "I apologize, esteemed Taoist Hunyuan. This matter arose from my lack of foresight. Should it bring harm to you, I would be plagued by an uneasy conscience for the rest of my days." With a gentle smile playing on his lips, Tong Yi remained silent. His keen senses, though unable to fully penetrate Hong Yun's thoughts due to their similar strengths, allowed him to catch a fleeting glimpse of the turmoil within. He discerned that Hong Yun's words were heartfelt and sincere, devoid of any pretense, which brought him a sense of relief. The goodness within Hong Yun was indeed genuine, validating his persistent efforts to guide him wisely. Meanwhile, witnessing this exchange, the 3,000 great powers, who had been watching with bated breath, collectively exhaled in relief. A relaxed expression emerged. The primordial purple energy, held in the hands of Hong Yun, still offered them a glimmer of hope. Yet, if it were in the possession of the Hunyuan Daoist, would they dare to seize it? Would they even have a chance? Each individual pondered deeply. Indeed, for the foundation of their sanctification, they would dare to undertake anything. Even aware of the formidable strength of the Hunyuan Daoist, capable of annihilating even the river of oblivion with a mere thought. What of it? They were many. They merely needed to wait and strategize. They would bide their time until Hong Jun, the Dao ancestor, entered seclusion, and until the Hunyuan Daoist departed from the Purple Cloud Palace. Surely, opportunity would arise. Yet, that was a matter for another time, fraught with challenges and unforeseen variables. Even if they succeeded in their endeavor, who could claim it? If it were possible, they would naturally prefer that the primordial purple energy fell into Hong Yun's possession. This would significantly ease their chances of acquisition. Thus, witnessing Hong Yun's plea for assistance go unanswered, the 3,000 mighty beings revealed smiles, their gazes fixated intently upon him. However, just as Hong Yun turned away, Yao Tai suddenly raised her hand, tugging at Tong Yi's sleeve, and whispered, "Senior brother, why not lend him a hand? This treasure would certainly not go to waste." Yao Tai held boundless confidence in her senior brother, believing that the trials of causality would pose no threat to him. Therefore, she could not comprehend why the offered primordial purple energy should be declined. She only understood that it would be beneficial to her senior brother, which prompted her to speak up. Upon hearing Yao Tai's words, the eyes of the 3,000 mighty beings widened, feeling as if the heavy stone they had just set down had been lifted once more. Were it not for Yao Tai's status as a celestial child, they might have rebuked her for meddling. After all, the Hunyuan Daoist himself had shown no interest. Why should a mere child interject? "Yao Tai, you mustn't. The ramifications of this purple energy are too great. I cannot bring harm to my Dao brother," Hong Yun, who had already turned, immediately glanced at Yao Tai and gestured dismissively. He had come to understand the situation, resolved to bear the burden of causality alone. He did not wish to draw even Jin Yuanzi close, fearing he might endanger that old friend. How could he then offer it to the Hunyuan Daoist? Behind Hong Yun, the 3,000 mighty beings remained silent, yet they nodded in unison. The scene was truly peculiar. However, What no one anticipated was that upon hearing Hong Yun's words, before Yao Tai could respond, the devoted disciple of Tong Yi, Hao Yin, could no longer contain his discontent. He stood on his tiptoes, craning his neck towards Hong Yun, and expressed his dissatisfaction. What does this causality mean for my senior brother? My senior brother can shatter the solar stars with his fists and crush the very earth of the primordial wasteland beneath his feet. What a calamity of causality! Easily extinguished with a mere gesture. Among the 3,000 formidable beings, upon hearing these words, Emperor Jun and Tai were struck as if by a thunderbolt, their faces displaying sheer terror. What is this? Are we facing annihilation? Meanwhile, at the Yaoqi beside Hao Yin, witnessing her own glory being usurped by Hao Yin, she momentarily froze. Yet, she quickly regained her composure. No, I am the one who cherishes my senior brother the most. With a firm expression, she elevated herself on tiptoe, hands clasped behind her back, and raised her voice towards Hong Yun, proclaiming, yes, my senior brother can shatter the 49 transformations of the tribulation with a single punch. What is this talk of becoming a saint? Even if the will of the heavenly Tao were to arrive, my senior brother could. Before she could finish her sentence, Tong Yi swiftly covered Yaoqi's mouth. At that moment, Tong Yi was engulfed in dread. Realizing he was truly indebted to these two lively characters, they could boast, but this was utterly absurd. If they continued, the will of the heavenly Tao might genuinely manifest. Fearing what further words might escape their lips, he acted without hesitation, launching a punch towards the primordial purple energy resting upon Hong Yun's shoulder. With a muffled sound, a silence fell over the 3,000 powerful beings, all taken aback, gazing in disbelief at Tong Yi's fist. Their eyes widened in astonishment. Chapter 109. Shattering the primordial purple energy. Has the primordial Taoist already achieved sanctification? Ding. Successfully shattered the primordial purple energy. Ding. Received feedback on the foundation of the Tao. Ding. Received feedback for source restoration. Listening to the notifications echoing in his mind, Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback. He had not anticipated so much. He merely thought that if Hong Yun did not want it, it would be best to shatter it for himself. Moreover, he was curious about what treasures might emerge. And now, not only did he gain the foundation of the Tao, but he also received source restoration. He hurriedly focused his mind and gazed into the system space. Name, source restoration grade. Details, can repair the host's missing source, enhance root bone comprehension, and restore the cultivation of the primordial spirit. What? It truly allows my primordial spirit realm to continue its cultivation? Tong Yi looked at the system panel's description, filled with great joy. Does this mean that henceforth, he can continue his cultivation, which had stagnated at the late stage of Tai Golden Immortal? No need to wait for the annihilation of the red-tailed monkey and the Lingming Stone Monkey? Furthermore, it enhances his root bone comprehension, allowing him to accelerate the cultivation of the Zixia Heart Sutra. What? It can do this too? Had he known, he would not have pondered so much. He could have shattered it right at the beginning when Hong Jun inquired. Thinking of this, without a moment's hesitation, he directly engaged his consciousness with the luminous sphere, employing the primordial essence for restoration. In the next instant, Tong Yi was enveloped by an unprecedented sensation that coursed through his entire being. From his corporeal form to his primordial spirit, even reaching the depths of his soul, where he felt an unparalleled sense of relief. It was as though a long-missing element had suddenly achieved completeness. Matters that had previously eluded his understanding suddenly became clear, illuminating his mind with clarity. Simultaneously, he joyfully discovered that the bottleneck he had encountered for thousands of years at the pinnacle of the Tai Golden Immortal stage was finally beginning to loosen. With but a thought, he could break through right there and ascend to the zenith of the Tai Golden Immortal realm. At that moment, the heavy burden in Tong Yi's heart was entirely lifted. Why had he deliberately ventured to the ancestral land of the Witch Clan in search of the 9 transformations' profound art? Was it not due to the absence of primordial essence that had hindered his progress in cultivation? Thus, he had contemplated focusing solely on refining his physical body. Yet now, his primordial spirit was finally able to cultivate, without the need to wait for the return of the red-tailed monkey or the spirit Brightstone monkey. This indicated that from this point forward, he could pursue dual cultivation without any reservations. After all, the 9 transformations' profound art was exceedingly arduous. As Tong Yi reveled in his newfound achievements, the multitude of powerful beings who had witnessed the spectacle finally reacted. Suddenly, the square erupted into a frenzy, shattering the 3 seconds of profound silence. Shattered? The primordial purple chi was shattered? Impossible. This was primordial purple chi. How could it be destroyed? Such a waste. Such a waste. If you do not want it, give it to me. Why shatter it? In all of the vast wilderness, there were only 7 strands. And now one had been broken? The 3,000 mighty beings roared in collective fury and despair. They rushed forward, surrounding the red cloud, desperately attempting to peer over his shoulder in search of any trace of the primordial purple chi. Alas, no matter how fervently they probed, they could find no sign whatsoever. As if the purple chi had never existed at all. The 3,000 powerful beings, unwilling to accept this outcome, sought to inch closer to Tong Yi's right hand. Yet, upon recalling his identity and the fact that this very hand had the power to obliterate both the river of oblivion and the primordial purple chi, they could not help but tremble in fear, daring only to observe from a distance, hoping to uncover the primordial purple chi within Tong Yi's grasp. They would rather believe it was an illusion than accept that this strand of purple chi had been shattered and annihilated by a mere fist. What? It has truly vanished. I can no longer sense its presence. At that moment, Red Cloud also regained his composure, mirroring the 3,000 powerful beings as he hastily examined his own shoulder and the entirety of his body, even meticulously scanning each strand of hair with his consciousness. The result? He could no longer perceive the essence of the primordial purple chi. This revelation filled Hongyun with immense joy. As the unbearable weight upon his shoulders vanished in that moment, he hurriedly bowed to Tong Yixing, expressing his gratitude. Thank you, fellow cultivator, for your rescue. I had not anticipated your terrifying strength. Even the primordial purple chi could not withstand a single punch from you. Could it be that you have already attained sainthood? Hongyun, the ancestral figure, repeatedly expressed his thanks, his tone brimming with sincerity. After the initial surprise, he regained his composure and recognized Tong Yi's formidable power. He had once contemplated shattering the primordial purple chi himself, and had even attempted to do so when it clung to him. Yet, no matter what techniques he employed, the primordial chi remained elusive, unquenchable, and impossible to disperse. Such an existence, however, could not endure a single strike from the primordial Taoist. Hongyun truly pondered whether the primordial Taoist, as the foremost disciple of Hongjun, had indeed achieved sainthood. Simultaneously, he deliberately voiced his thoughts, not for any other reason, but to convey them to the 3,000 mighty beings behind him. The incident had unfolded unexpectedly, and he wished to absolve the primordial Taoist from any repercussions. Hongyun did not want these 3,000 powerful figures to harbor resentment toward the primordial Taoist. To prevent that animosity, there was but one course of action: to amplify the prowess of the primordial Taoist, instilling fear in them. After all, would they dare to resent Hongjun? Certainly not. Thus, by extolling the primordial Taoist to the skies, they would be intimidated. With this thought illuminating his mind, Hongyun raised his voice once more. That punch from the sage was evidently pure physical strength, one that even the primordial purple chi could not withstand. Could it be that the sage has achieved sainthood through his physical form? Strangely enough, he might have inadvertently believed his own words, perhaps influenced by his prior experiences with the techniques of Jane and Zhuanti. Upon uttering this, he lifted his gaze, his face reflecting disbelief as he stared at Tong Yi. As soon as Hongyun's words echoed, the commotion in the crowd dissipated, plunging the entire square into silence once more. Those mighty beings who had been discreetly scanning Tong Yi's right hand with their divine senses turned pale with fright and promptly withdrew their focus. Truth be told, had it not been for Hongyun's remarks, they would not have ventured into such speculation. However, once this notion surfaced, the implications were terrifyingly plausible. Previously, within the Grand Hall, the primordial Taoist had merely patted the shoulder of the river Styx, and he had vanished. The gathered crowd could not discern the nature of his technique. Among them, the three pure ones, Niuhua, and Jane and Zhuanti, exhibited the most pronounced reactions, their eyes widening in realization and trepidation. They suddenly grasped the significance of their master's words. Why the eldest brother did not require the primordial purple chi. It was because he had already attained sainthood. Moreover, the attainment of sanctity in physical form requires not the primordial purple aura. Upon this realization, Taiching's eyes widened in astonishment. He chastised himself for his own ignorance. Why was it that the eldest senior brother could articulate the true essence of morality, leading him to enlightenment? Such an effect could only stem from the teachings of the master. This indicated that the eldest senior brother had already attained sanctity. No wonder he sensed that his own opportunity for ascendance lay with the eldest senior brother. It was also no surprise that he had previously worried about the eldest brother being caught in the explosion of the river of the underworld and had sought aid from the master, who had remained indifferent. It turned out that all of this was because the eldest senior brother had indeed achieved sanctity, in physical form, no less. At that moment, the 3,000 mighty beings reflected on their earlier actions, scanning the sage with their divine consciousness, causing them to involuntarily retract. Chapter 110. The junior disciple of the river of the underworld comes to apologize to the primordial sage. It became evident that the eldest senior brother had long ago attained sanctity. The junior disciple, Meng Lang, realized the multitude of disrespectful acts he had committed. He humbly beseeched the eldest senior brother for forgiveness. The Taoist Laozi, having grasped the entirety of the situation first, immediately stepped forward, bypassing the crimson clouds, and bowed deeply to Tong Yi, exclaiming loudly. This bow was significant. It seemed to unlock some mechanism, triggering a chain reaction. The other 3,000 mighty beings awakened in unison. If Laozi had proclaimed it, then there was certainly no escaping the truth. Yuan Shi, recalling his previous provocations towards the eldest senior brother, was drenched in cold sweat. At the same time, he felt a surge of gratitude for the eldest senior brother's enduring kindness, who had not held his previous misdeeds against him. The junior disciple bears guilt for being unaware of the eldest senior brother's sanctity. Congratulations on your attainment, senior brother. Yuan Shi hurriedly approached, paid his respects, and shouted with fervor. The other mighty beings, realizing the gravity of the situation, dared not show any negligence. They rushed forward, bowing in unison to Tong Yi. We are guilty. Please forgive us, sage. Congratulations on your attainment of sanctity. The voices of the 3,000 mighty beings rose in a thunderous chorus, filling the heavens and earth, shattering the purple clouds above the Zixiao Daoist temple. Witnessing this scene, Tong Yi was left dumbfounded. Standing beside him, Hao Yin and Yao Tai were equally bewildered. They exchanged glances, their youthful faces etched with disbelief. Unlike the 3,000 mighty beings, they had witnessed Tong Yi's journey from his birth, through his apprenticeship, to his current state. They felt as though they had missed something crucial. How could it be that the eldest senior brother had attained sanctity, and in physical form, no less? How could this be possible? Yet, with the words of the crimson clouds and the affirmations of the mighty beings, could it be that the eldest senior brother truly had achieved sanctity? Were they the only ones unaware? When had this transpired? The small minds of Hao Yin and Yao Tai brimmed with astonishment and confusion. After delving deep into their memories, they suddenly locked eyes, each perceiving the profound enlightenment reflected in the other's gaze. They understood. Pangahal. Thousands of years prior, they had accompanied their senior brother to the ancestral grounds of the Witch clan. However, only their senior brother was permitted entry into Pangahal. Upon his emergence, they were merely aware that he had obtained a fortuitous opportunity, yet remained utterly oblivious to its nature. Could it be that their senior brother had achieved sanctification within Pangahal? Was such a feat even conceivable? The wide eyes of Hao Yin and Yao Tai, nearly bulging like bronze bells, exchanged incredulous glances. They found it implausible. Sanctification in such a brief span of less than 3,000 years? Yet, upon witnessing the 3,000 formidable beings still bowing in reverence and glancing at their senior brother, who was adept at performing miraculous feats, Hao Yin and Yao Tai shook their heads, striving to accept that this notion might indeed hold a semblance of truth. With this thought, the two celestial children raised their gaze towards Tong Yi, their eyes brimming with profound resentment. Such a monumental event as their senior brother's sanctification, and yet he had chosen not to share it with them. Were they no longer his favored disciples? Tong Yi felt the weight of their many stares, even Hao Yin and Yao Tai regarding him with such expressions. He could not help but exhibit a bewildered countenance, nearly pointing at himself in disbelief. Me? Sanctified? Or rather, sanctified in body? How was it that he himself was unaware of this matter? He glanced at the rumor-monger, Hong Yun, who bore an expression of sincere gratitude and admiration. Goodness! This purveyor of rumors had convinced even himself. No wonder his assertions seemed so genuine. Nevertheless, Tong Yi understood that these individuals had been misled into believing his sanctification due to various misunderstandings. He yearned to clarify the situation, yet words eluded him as they lingered on the tip of his tongue. Should he confess that he had not been sanctified, but rather had activated a unique ability, thus enabling him to shatter the river of oblivion and dismantle the primordial purple energy? Such a declaration would likely lead them to further believe in his sanctification. At that moment, a streak of blood light surged from the chaos, swiftly descending upon the square and transforming into a figure. The 3,000 mighty beings, who had been maintaining their bowing posture, turned their heads upon hearing the commotion, only to discover the arrival of a familiar acquaintance. This old friend gazed in astonishment at the scene unfolding in the square. 3,000 formidable beings paying homage to a single individual? To whom were they bowing? As he peered towards the front of the crowd, his eyes met Tong Yi's, causing him to tremble involuntarily, fear flooding his gaze. Yet ultimately, reason triumphed over fear. He hastened forward, his figure flashing to the forefront of the throng, landing beside the three pure ones. Thud! He dropped to his knees, bowing fervently with repeated prostrations. I, the junior of the River of Oblivion, have come to seek forgiveness from the sage of Han Yuan. May the sage forgive the impudent actions of the younger generation. The venerable ancestor of the Nether River, having hastily rushed from the primordial blood sea, prostrated himself while exclaiming. The palpable fear in his voice was immediately felt by those who heard him. No one knew how the Nether River had endured in recent times. He possessed 480 million blood deity avatars, yet could only retain the pinnacle of his power in one at a time. Naturally, The one who attended the assembly to receive teachings was the most formidable of them all. After listening to the teachings, he even ascended to the threshold of sanctity. However, in the presence of the Hunyuan, such power proved insufficient even for self-destruction. The moment his adversary placed a hand upon his shoulder, the Nether River felt as though all his strength had been siphoned away. Every vestige of celestial energy, laws, divine abilities, and even the souls of his avatars were utterly obliterated. Only the terror of that moment resonated, simultaneously instilling fear in the 479,999,999 blood deity avatars of the Underworld Sea. In unison, all avatars recoiled to the depths of the Blood Sea, concurrently convinced that this Hunyuan sage's cultivation surpassed the threshold of sanctity. Only a sage possesses such means, capable of annihilating even one in the midst of self-destruction. Thus, after their initial terror, they grappled with this dilemma countless times, ultimately deciding that they must not offend the sage under any circumstances. They resolved to return to the assembly and seek forgiveness from the Hunyuan sage. Otherwise, despite their multitude of avatars, they feared the sage might bring about the annihilation of the Underworld Sea. To their astonishment, upon arriving at the assembly, they found 3,000 mighty beings still present, offering their respects to the Hunyuan sage. The Nether River dared not hesitate for a moment and immediately approached to bow and seek pardon, resulting in the scene that unfolded. Observing this moment, the 3,000 mighty beings grew increasingly convinced that their actions were justified. Meanwhile, Tong Yi stood in stunned silence. It was over. There was no way to explain this now. Enough. Rise. This sage shall not hold a grudge. Let us continue to distribute the treasures, Tong Yi said, hands clasped behind his back, his white robes fluttering, a tone of resignation in his voice. We shall obey. The 3,000 mighty beings dared not defy. Although they harbored lingering resentment towards the Hunyuan sage for the destruction of the primordial purple energy, they quickly suppressed such thoughts, fearful that the sage could discern their inner musings. Moreover, in their view, although one path had been lost, there remained 6 others within the Purple Cloud Hall. Perhaps one day, another would emerge. Thus, they dismissed their concerns and turned their attention towards the treasure distribution rock, for the opportunity lay before them. Why linger over that which was unattainable? Only the 6 beings, including the 3 pure ones and Nuwa, were privy to the fact that the Grand Hall no longer contained any primordial purple energy, which had long been divided among them. Initially, they vied for the last remnant of this primordial essence, each driven by their own motives. Nuwa sought it for Fushi, while the other 5 aimed to secure it for their future disciples. However, they had not anticipated that this final strand of primordial energy would be shattered by the first elder brother's single blow. In light of this outcome, it was perhaps for the best. It clearly indicated that among them, only these 6 possessed the potential to ascend to sainthood. Aside from Nuwa, who harbored a tinge of regret, the other 5 felt a sense of relief. After all, if there were too many saints, would their status still retain its reverence? Contemplating this, the 6 siblings experienced an unprecedented moment of tacit understanding. After exchanging a subtle glance, they composed themselves and turned to walk toward the center of the plaza. Despite their disdain for Jean and Junti within the Grand Hall, outside it, they functioned as a cohesive entity. This principle was understood by all. Seeing that the 3,000 powerful beings had finally ceased their encirclement, Han Yun let out a deep sigh of relief and cast a grateful glance at Tomi. Thank you, Saint. Thank you, Fairy. He then bowed to the Yaoqi celestial youth before making his way toward the treasure-dividing rock. To him, if it had not been for Yaoqi's timely intervention, the Hunyuan saint might not have lent him assistance. This gratitude would forever be etched in his heart. No, it could not merely be remembered. Han Yun resolved to visit the treasure-dividing rock immediately to explore his fortune. Whatever he might acquire, he would certainly present it to Yaoqi as a token of gratitude. At this moment, Tomi finally found the opportunity to examine the treasure-dividing rock that his master had set forth. With a slight movement, he appeared instantaneously at the center of the plaza. Before him stood a mountain rock, its presence seemingly timeless, exuding an air of profound antiquity and weight. On the face of the rock facing the Grand Hall, the 3 characters, treasure-dividing rock, were inscribed. Is this truly the treasure-dividing rock? Tomi scrutinized the formation, and the system panel promptly displayed its details. Name, treasure-dividing rock. Grade, innate supreme treasure. Restrictions, 8972 prohibitions. Details, contains countless internal spaces, storing numerous treasures. Those with fate may compel it to reveal its treasures. This thing? It is, astonishingly, an innate supreme treasure? As Tomi gazed at the treasure-dividing rock before him, his eyes sparkled with excitement. Indeed, in the presence of his esteemed master, innate supreme treasures seemed to be as common as dirt. Even a rock meant for dividing treasures was an innate supreme treasure. Yet, it made sense. He recalled that there should be a plethora of valuable items within. If this treasure-dividing rock were of inferior quality, how could it possibly contain so many treasures? With this thought in mind, he raised his hand to touch the rock, eager to discern its material. No, wait. As Tong Yi suddenly appeared and raised his hand towards the treasure-splitting rock, the 3,000 mighty beings waiting in line simultaneously felt a jolt in their eyelids. In unison, they turned their gaze towards Tong Yi's hand, their hearts filled with trepidation, instinctively lifting their own hands in an attempt to intervene. However, the realization that he was a saint rendered their legs immobile, as if bound by the very laws of the earth. Fortunately, at that moment, Hao Qianyao hastily stepped forward, exclaiming, "Senior brother, we cannot allow any further disruption. If the master finds out, it will be our fault." With urgency in her voice, she rushed towards him. In that instant, they cast aside any concerns regarding the status of a saint. Hao Qian clung to Tong Yi's leg, while the petite Yaozi leapt up, grasping his right hand. The two little celestial children, one clutching his leg and the other his hand, swiftly lifted Tong Yi and soared backward. Simultaneously, they called out to the powerful beings at the front of the line, "What are you standing there for? Hurry and see if there are any opportunities. Let the treasure division commence." Tong Yi stood there, bewildered, watching the treasure-splitting rock recede into the distance, while Yaozi clung to his arm like an octopus. He glanced at Hao Qian, who was hoisting him into the air. With a forlorn expression, he gazed skyward, feeling a profound sense of despair, as if he were on the verge of tears. Was his reputation truly so tarnished? He had merely wished to discern the material of the rock. The heavens could bear witness. It was filled with treasures. Why would he seek to destroy it? Nonetheless, Hao Qianyao dutifully carried him back to the entrance. The two celestial children looked up at him and said, "Senior brother, enough of this play. Let us wait until they finish dividing the treasures before we have our fun. Shall we?" Hao Qian gazed at Tong Yi with a pitiful expression, his voice laden with entreaty. "Senior brother, we have not held your concealment of attaining sainthood against you. Must you also jeopardize the treasure-splitting rock? What will we do if the master gets angry?" Yaozi, hands on her hips, glared at Tong Yi with fierce determination. Her lips pursed like a little goldfish. In times of helplessness, one often finds a reason to smile. Tong Yi chuckled softly, choosing silence, and nodded obediently. Standing still as he gazed at the treasure-splitting rock, he could discern that his master had taken on 6 new disciples, and it was natural for these two celestial children to worry about losing favor, hence their concern for the rock. He decided not to tease them any further. Suddenly, a resonant hum of a treasure echoed across the square. In the center, Taiching's palm was just detaching from the treasure-splitting rock, and the treasure flew forth at that very moment. Taiching's eyes gleamed with delight as the treasure emerged. He promptly shielded it with his body and swiftly tucked it into his sleeve. Only a handful of individuals present caught a glimpse of the treasure's edge. What treasure could it be? "Oh, Taiching, you are exceedingly cautious. Indeed, my friend. Do show us what treasure you possess. It must be something extraordinary, otherwise, why would he conceal it so carefully?" The 3,000 formidable beings expressed their curiosity and grievances. Yet, Taiching chose not to respond to any of them. Instead, he wore a smile and moved to the side, awaiting the division of treasures between Yuanshi and Tongtian. A red flag, one of the 5 directions flags? In front of the grand door, Tong Yi's eyes sparkled with violet light as he murmured to himself. Although Taiching was swift, he could not evade Tong Yi's keen observation. He discerned the treasure, a red flag measuring 1 foot and 7 inches. No wonder Taiching bore such a smile. If it were indeed one of the 5 directions flags, it would be a primordial spiritual treasure. Soon, Yuanshi and Tongtian approached in turn, their palms pressed against the treasure-dispensing rock. In the next moment, the rock yielded its treasures. Mimicking Taiching, Yuanshi swiftly collected the item as soon as it appeared. The crowd widened their eyes, still unable to catch a clear sight. However, Tong Yi perceived it as well. It was another flag, this one a deep yellow. Truly, like brothers, they received the same treasure. Could it be that Tongtian too would acquire a flag? Tong Yi mused curiously. In the following second, Tong Yi's violet-hued pupils contracted. He saw the treasure-dispensing rock suddenly tremble. Everyone present was left bewildered, for this time, the treasure Tongtian received was not swiftly tucked away. Instead, it was displayed before all. It was not that Tongtian was slow. Rather, the treasure revealed by the rock was more than a mere handful. Chapter 112, Poor Tongtian. The red cloud offers the flag to the Yao pool the moment Tongtian's palm disengaged from the treasure-dispensing rock. It trembled violently, unexpectedly releasing 5 treasures. Each one floated in midair, radiating distinct hues. Tongtian, befuddled by the serendipity, stood rooted in place, gazing at the 5 treasures. Meanwhile, Laozi and Yuanshi, who stood beside him, were left speechless, alternating their gaze between the 5 treasures and the small flag tucked within their sleeves, feeling as though their own treasures had lost their allure. Their smiles fading away. Behind them, The 3,000 formidable beings erupted in excitement upon witnessing this spectacle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He actually obtained 5 treasures from the rock. Oh, Grandao Ancestor. Is this fair? Or is Tong Tian simply magnanimous, displaying all 5 treasures for us to see? What? 5? Wait, are you suggesting that those 24 beads also count as a treasure? That golden artifact shaped like a fighting tool seems to be something significant. The 3,000 formidable beings involuntarily stepped forward, craning their necks to fixate on the treasures hovering before Tong Tian. They gasped in unison, their voices brimming with envy and disbelief. Simultaneously, a sense of unease began to wash over them. Previously, I observed that Laozi and Yuanshi each acquired merely 1 item. I was under the impression that each could only extract a single treasure from the Finban. However, what transpired now? Tong Tian alone secured 5 remarkable artifacts, each of which appeared extraordinary. What if Finban is devoid of treasures when they come to claim them? Hearing the astonished gasps from the crowd, Tong Tian finally realized that he had been rather ostentatious. He hurriedly stepped forward, sweeping his sleeve to gather all 5 treasures, and then a satisfied smile graced his visage. The envy of others was their own concern. This Finban was crafted by his revered master. Who would dare voice dissent? Acquiring such a plethora of treasures signified his deeper bond with the master. Contemplating this, he turned to pay his respects to Tong Yi at the entrance of the Grand Hall. Indeed, his connection with the senior brother was also profound. He was the sole sage present. Perhaps it was the senior brother who subtly altered the Finban, enabling him to obtain such an abundance of treasures. The Hunyuan Golden Dipper? The Purple Lightning Hammer? 24 Sea-Calming Pearls? The Heart-Piercing Lock? And what of the final item? That was of little consequence. Unbeknownst to Tong Tian, beneath Tong Yi's seemingly tranquil demeanor lay a torrent of resentment towards Hong Jun. He was bestowed but a mere spearhead, while Tong Tian received such a bounty. The elder was undeniably biased. No, if I fail to acquire anything valuable, I shall certainly confront the elder with a tempest of complaints. Yet, as Tong Yi pondered the tribulations that might await Tong Tian, his sect's demise, the betrayal of disciples, and ultimately confinement as a sage, his envy swiftly dissipated. He returned a smile to Tong Tian, yet internally sighed. This young man bore a heavy fate. The multitude of treasures he received might well be the elder's premature recompense. Laozi and Yuanshi, initially intent on departing after obtaining their own treasures, found themselves feeling somewhat unsettled and curious upon witnessing Tong Tian's remarkable acquisition. They lingered, eager to see what treasures the subsequent individuals might procure. With Tong Tian's simultaneous acquisition of 5 artifacts, the excitement among the powerful figures behind him surged, hastening the distribution of treasures. Nuwa extracted a dark blue small cauldron from Finban, exuding the aura of a primordial spirit treasure. Tong Yi recognized it as the Qingquan Ding. Jane procured a small blue flag from Finban, resembling the one obtained by Laozi and Yuanshi, albeit in a different hue. Tong Yi speculated whether Finban contained flags of all 5 directions, given that 3 had already emerged. Meanwhile, Kunti retrieved a bamboo from Finban, much to Tong Yi's astonishment. This is the bitter bamboo, one of the innate 10 spiritual roots. He had thought that he would have acquired it long ago, but unexpectedly, it was at this moment that he obtained the bitter bamboo. After the 6 disciples of the Xianmen acquired their treasures, other powerful beings also received numerous valuable items. The Western Queen Mother obtained one of the innate 10 spiritual roots, the peach tree, while the Eastern Prince received a piece of dragon-patterned jade. The ancestor of the underworld also acquired a black flag. Of course, as fate would have it, some mighty beings procured treasures from the dividing treasure rock, while others left empty-handed. Interestingly, none of those who followed obtained treasures that surpassed those of Tong Tian. Each individual who approached was filled with immense anxiety. Those who acquired treasures either left beaming with joy or hurriedly exited the Zixiao Daoist temple in a flurry. The powerful beings who left with nothing sighed in disappointment, their eyes flickering with malice as they scrutinized those who had obtained treasures, comparing their strengths and seeking targets. Soon, only one individual remained among the throng of 3,000 powerful beings, and that was Hong Yun. Although some had departed from the square, the majority remained, curiously awaiting the final outcome or searching for targets to pursue. When they saw Hong Yun step forward, their gazes were irresistibly drawn to the dividing treasure rock. Buzz! Before long, as expected, a treasure flew out from the dividing treasure rock. Hong Yun, displaying great confidence, did not conceal or store it away. As the crowd gazed upon him, they were momentarily stunned. Once again, it was a flag. Its size and shape were identical to those obtained earlier by Laozi, Yuanshi, Jiayin, and the ancestor of the underworld, albeit in a different hue. The small flag that Hong Yun acquired was white. The multitude of powerful beings were momentarily taken aback. In total, there were 5 small flags. Could it be that these 5 flags form a set? Only Laozi, Yuan Shi, Jie Yin, and the ancestor of the underworld, who had also obtained small flags, exchanged glances, their eyes gleaming with understanding. They knew exactly what this small flag represented, the Five Directions flag of innate origins. Each flag, representing the east, west, south, north, and center, possessed unparalleled power. If they could be united, they would form a grand formation, a seamless defense and offense, impervious to all methods. Thus, upon seeing the white small flag in Hong Yun's possession, they all coveted it for themselves. Not only Hong Yun, but they also desired the flags of the other four. However, what Laozi, Yuan Shi, Jie Yin, and the ancestor of the underworld did not anticipate was that as soon as Hong Yun acquired the white small flag, he turned and soared towards the direction of the Zixiao Great Hall, landing before Tong Yi and the other two in the blink of an eye. No, no, no. A tremor coursed through the hearts of Laozi, Yuan Shi, Jie Yin, and the ancestor of the underworld as they suddenly realized what Hong Yun intended to do. They screamed in their hearts, but the very event they wished to avert was, nonetheless, unfolding before them, the fairy of the Yaoqi. This flag is named the Western Plain Cloud Banner, a treasure of primordial spiritual essence. I, a humble practitioner, present this flag to the Celestial Maiden, expressing my gratitude for her previous kindness. As the crimson clouds cradled the small banner, a gentle smile adorned her face as she bowed towards the Yao pool. Witnessing this scene, the hearts of the four sages shattered. It was over. They could no longer form a complete set. Chapter 113. The Unsealed Emperor's Mirror and the Emperor's Tower. Snap! Snap! If one could hear the sound of hearts breaking, the four sages would undoubtedly have heard the echo of their own despair. At the moment they beheld the crimson clouds offering the banner to the Yao pool, their spirits sank to desolation. For others, there might still be a chance to exchange for the Five Directions flags and assemble a set. But Yao pool? Not to mention the Celestial Maiden of the Tao ancestor, her audacity to grasp the hand of the primordial saint instilled a deep sense of dread in them. Now that this small flag had found its way into her possession, she would undoubtedly comprehend the significance of the Five Directions flags and their formidable power. Their hopes of retrieving the small white flag from her grasp grew increasingly dim. Perhaps, the Five Directions flags they had just acquired would soon slip through their fingers. Cursed be you, crimson clouds. Why must you be so generous? The four of them internally cursed in unison. Me? In stark contrast to the lamentations of the four sages, Yao pool stood in a daze. Her almond-shaped eyes stared blankly at the crimson clouds. Despite being considerably taller, the figure graciously bent down, cradling the small white flag, allowing her to gaze upon it without lifting her head. She felt a mixture of surprise and flattery. No, there is no need for such courtesy. It was merely a trivial gesture. You needn't be so polite. This is a treasure you obtained from the Foambao Rock. How could I accept it? Regaining her composure, Yao pool hastily attempted to return the small white flag. She could be carefree and fierce towards evildoers. But when faced with the kindness of someone like the crimson clouds, she found herself at a loss. From a distance, witnessing this exchange, the four sages standing in various positions within the square brightened with delight. Yes, exactly. Do not casually accept gifts from such old men. They roared within their hearts. Meanwhile, the crimson clouds appeared taken aback, observing Yao pool with curiosity. Typically, when bestowing treasures upon fellow practitioners, most would graciously accept with smiles. A few might feign reluctance, only to ultimately receive the gifts. Yet, Yao pool's outright rejection was a rarity, occurring only a handful of times. Could it be that he lacked sincerity? After all, the primordial saint extinguishing that primordial purple energy was a salvation from dire straits. The benevolence of a sage, he would certainly not regard as mere triviality. Therefore, no matter what, he was determined to present this treasure to the Yao pool Celestial Maiden, who had spoken on his behalf. Fairy, there is no need for you to refuse. Were it not for your intercession, I would have never had the chance to share in this treasure. You must accept this token, otherwise my conscience shall be troubled, and I would inevitably succumb to despair, Red Cloud declared with unwavering sincerity. With that, he pushed the small white flag into Yaoqi's hands. Before she could even register what had transpired, Red Cloud's figure shimmered and transformed into a crimson mist, vanishing without a trace. Wait, what just happened? Yaoqi gazed at the empty space before her, and then glanced at the small white flag in her hand, utterly perplexed. Senior brother? She called, directing her gaze towards the silent Tong Yi, her face a canvas of anxiety and her eyes pleading for assistance. Observing Yaoqi, who appeared as a startled little rabbit, was undeniably endearing. Tong Yi couldn't help but shrug his shoulders and say, since it was given to you, you should accept it. This little flag is quite charming and complements your demeanor beautifully. At his words, Yaoqi paused, looking down at the small white flag. Its pristine whiteness, adorned with patterns of auspicious clouds, exuded an ethereal quality that grew increasingly delightful the more she gazed upon it. Moreover, her senior brother had remarked that the flag suited her essence. With a slight smile curling her lips, Yaoqi murmured, "Very well then. I shall accept it for now and return it to Red Cloud or present him with another gift when we meet again." With that, she resolutely tucked the flag at her waist. "Indeed, my senior brother said it suits me. It looks even better now. Does it look good?" Yaoqi inquired, turning towards Hao Yin, who had been watching in silence. Hao Yin, filled with envy, nodded earnestly and replied, "Honestly, it looks a bit odd." "Odd? How so?" Yaoqi retorted, irked, as she aimed a playful elbow at him, her annoyance flaring. "Enough of this playful banter. You both should hurry and see if you can acquire any treasures." Tong Yi interjected, pressing a hand on one of the celestial children. "Can we really try to?" Hao Yin queried, his face a mixture of hesitation and anticipation. "But the master didn't he say we could share in the treasures?" "Let us go and find out," Tong Yi replied nonchalantly, effortlessly leading a little rascal beside him as he swiftly made his way to the treasure-dividing rock. He was indifferent to the situation. After all, thousands of formidable beings were already queuing for treasures, and the addition of Hao Yin and Yaoqi wouldn't make a difference. Moreover, it would be more appropriate for him to claim all the treasures only after Hao Yin and Yaoqi had received their share. "Come on, Hao Yin, you go first." Tong Yi gently set Hao Yin down and nudged him playfully, urging him forward. The lad had just witnessed the acquisition of a primordial treasure from the Yaoqi, and his mouth nearly watered at the sight. Reflecting on the previous incident at the ninth heaven, where Hao Yin had failed to seize the gourd, Tong Yi felt a pang of sympathy. He silently resolved that if Hao Yin were to miss out on a treasure this time, he would later share some of his own spoils from the gemstone rock. Hao Yin felt a sharp sting on his backside, yet his face was alight with excitement. He paid no heed to the discomfort, pressing himself against the gemstone rock, eagerly watching others claim their shares. Those among them, who had been designated as celestial youths, had long since lost their patience. The moment his palms touched the surface of the gemstone rock, Hao Yin's eyes widened in anticipation. His expression tense as he gazed at the mystical stone. Around him, powerful beings began to gather, drawn by curiosity, including the four revered sages. However, their attention was not on Hao Yin, but rather on the small white flag hanging at the waist of the Yaoqi, their faces clouded with a sense of despair. Suddenly, two resonant sounds emerged from the gemstone rock. Everyone turned their gaze to witness a mirror and a small tower materializing before Hao Yin. The mirror was neither gold nor jade. Its back adorned with ancient inscriptions resembling tadpole characters, while its surface remained shrouded in a misty haze. The small tower, crafted entirely of jade, bore engravings of human figures. These two treasures exuded an aura so faint that they seemed ordinary, devoid of any remarkable qualities. Yet, inexplicably, they began to orbit around Hao Yin as if endowed with consciousness, leaving him momentarily transfixed, lost in thought as he beheld the mirror and the tower. Tong Yi's gaze flickered, and the system's data panel manifested before him. Name: Hao Yin Mirror, unsealed. Grade: Primordial Treasure. Restrictions: 63 prohibitions. Details: Mirror of the Heavenly Emperor, capable of perceiving all realms. Requires the power of the 33 heavens to unseal. Name: Hao Yin Tower, unsealed. Grade: Primordial Treasure. Restrictions: 63 prohibitions. Details: Tower of the Heavenly Emperor, housing celestial soldiers. Can summon and command. Requires the power of the 33 heavens to unseal. The Hao Yin Mirror and Hao Yin Tower, able to perceive all realms and summon celestial warriors, were treasures that demanded divine power for their unsealing. Tong Yi marveled at the attributes displayed, pondering how Hao Yin had come into possession of them so fortuitously. His curiosity piqued. Tong Yi approached Hao Yin and gently ruffled his hair, inquiring softly. Hao Yin looked up, his face a picture of confusion, and sheepishly replied, "I don't know. I just feel that these two treasures are quite peculiar." It seemed as if they had something to convey to him. Tong Yi blinked, feeling a sense of relief within. Fortunately, the lad had not foreseen the purposes of these two treasures. That was a good thing. Some matters, when known in advance, are not necessarily advantageous. For instance, the fact that Hao Yin would eventually ascend to the position of the Celestial Emperor. At this moment, the heavenly realm had yet to be opened, remaining in a state of vacancy, and must endure a period of time before its dominion is established. Had Hao Yin known this beforehand and succumbed to the allure of power, it would have been unfavorable. Thus, it was best to conceal them and study them thoroughly to discern what they wished to reveal. Tong Yi patted Hao Yin on the head, interrupting his thoughts, and urged him on. He felt he had been overthinking. His master placed these two treasures on the treasure separation rock precisely to allow Hao Yin to acquire them through his own fortune, in a manner that was both rightful and just. In the future, it would allow the mighty beings of the celestial realm to comprehend this. Hao Yin had long since aligned himself with destiny, possessing the qualifications of a celestial emperor and it was only natural for him to accept the heavenly realm. How could he possibly overlook this matter? Oh, okay, Hao Qian replied innocently, promptly stowing away the two seemingly ordinary treasures of the Celestial Emperor. He then obediently stepped aside, feeling a bit pressured by the time he had already consumed. At this moment, feeling as if he were sitting on pins and needles, he knew he must move aside, lest Yaoqi decide to give him a kick. Without a moment's hesitation, Yaoqi stepped forward, her small hand descending upon the treasure separation rock. Buzz, the rock, as if having awaited this moment for ages, immediately released a treasure that flew before Yaoqi. The onlookers beheld a golden hairpin in its entirety. Strangely enough, this hairpin, much like Hao Qian's mirror and small tower, emitted no other aura, appearing as an ordinary object. Even when scanned with divine consciousness, it seemed shrouded in layers of mist, revealing nothing, just like Hao Qian. Upon seeing this golden hairpin, Yaoqi was momentarily stunned. Only Tong Yi observed an attribute panel before him. Name: Yaoqi's golden hairpin, unsealed. Grade: innate spiritual treasure. Details: the Queen Mother's hairpin. Requires the power of the celestial stars to unseal. It appeared that, like Hao Qian, the master had perhaps commenced the game a tad prematurely. Tong Yi mused to himself. Fearing that this little girl might also indulge in premature musings, he swiftly seized the hairpin and crouched down to place it in Yaoqi's hair. This hairpin is lovely. The treasure separation rock knows you well. Do not overthink it. Stand aside and watch your senior brother achieve a series of 10 draws. Huh? Yaoqi blinked, snapping back from her reverie. Upon comprehending Tong Yi's words, she nodded silently, her charming face flushed as she took a step back, obediently standing beside Hao Qian. The two lively treasures, their eyes wide with curiosity, could not help but wonder what fortune their senior brother would unveil within the treasure separation rock. Not just them. At this moment, everyone was captivated. The powerful beings who had not yet left were captivated, their eyes wide, holding their breath as they gazed intently at the splitting treasure rock. Among them, the least fortunate would still acquire postnatal treasures, while the Hunyuan saints would surely obtain innate spiritual treasures, perhaps even more than what the Tongtian Taoist had secured. It was entirely plausible that 10 treasures could emerge at once. Turning to face the many expectant gazes, Tong Yi turned towards the splitting treasure rock. Mimicking the gestures of the over 3,000 individuals before him, he raised his hand and placed it upon the rock. Instantly, a dazzling light flashed before his eyes, and he felt as though his very essence was being drawn into the splitting treasure rock. In the next moment, everything around him transformed. He found himself not in the plaza, but in an entirely different realm. The surroundings were extraordinarily dreamlike. Beneath his feet lay an expansive meadow, and all around him floated countless bubbles, each the size of a palm. He could sense that within each bubble existed a unique space. Clearly, these innumerable bubbles were the repositories for treasures. The moment he appeared, all the bubbles seemed to come alive, rushing towards him in a tidal wave. In an instant, he was engulfed by them. Every bubble that made contact with him burst immediately. Oh my, how popular am I? Tong Yi thought, his heart swelling with joy at the sight. If this were the case, would the treasures he acquired surpass those of Tongtian? However, his elation was fleeting. In the next moment, he realized a rather unfortunate truth. While the bubbles surrounding him were abundant, none contained a single treasure. What the hell? Tong Yi withdrew his hand, his spirit returning to the plaza, his expression one of bewilderment. It seemed he had miscalculated. The treasures within the splitting treasure rock appeared to have been fully distributed. Senior brother, what's wrong? Did no glowing bubbles approach you? Yaoqi stepped forward, her curiosity piqued as she softly inquired. As she spoke, the numerous powerful beings behind her widened their eyes in anticipation, all focused on Tong Yi. Moments ago, when the Hunyuan saint had touched the splitting treasure rock, they had been filled with immense curiosity, expecting to witness history in the making. Yet, after 3 breaths had passed, there was not even a tremor from the splitting treasure rock, let alone the emergence of any treasures. In that instant, expressions of astonishment adorned the faces of the powerful beings. Could it be that the Hunyuan saint would gain no fortune at all? Suddenly, some could no longer suppress their laughter, biting their lips to stifle the sound, especially those who had only acquired postnatal treasures or had received nothing at all. They bowed their heads, unwilling to let their amusement be discovered. After all, even the saints could not procure treasures, and in comparison, their spirits were considerably lifted, finding solace in the moment. However, Tong Yi remained oblivious to the reactions of those around him. He leaned closer to Yaoqi, confirming once more. Are you saying that the bubbles inside emit light? How many? Yaoqi blinked and raised her hand, extending her index finger. Hiss. Tong Yi covered his mouth. The answer had been revealed. Yet, he was not disheartened, directing the same inquiry towards Hao Tian, who raised 3 fingers. Hiss. Tong Yi clutched his heart, utterly resigned. The bubbles he had just observed glowed not a single bit. This meant that Hao Tian and Yao Qi had taken the last 3 treasures. The treasure distribution rock was entirely devoid of treasures. Witnessing this scene, the celestial beings surrounding them firmly acknowledged a singular truth. The primordial saints had obtained not a single treasure. In an instant, the entire square fell into a profound silence. All the mighty beings could not help but retreat, bowing their heads, their bodies trembling slightly. The foremost among them grit their teeth, internally berating themselves for positioning so close, nearly exploding from the effort to suppress their laughter. At that moment, a crisp sound echoed. Tong Yi, unbeknownst to them, had returned to the treasure distribution rock, his right hand gently resting upon it. Chapter 115. Shattering the treasure distribution rock. Invitation to the Eastern King's banquet. Ding. Successfully shattered the treasure distribution rock. Ding. Received insight into the laws of spatial comprehension. Ding. Acquired mastery in artifact forging. As the 2 notifications resonated in his mind, Tong Yi finally moved his left hand away from his heart. Inhale. He took a deep breath, feeling a wave of exhilaration. Mastery in artifact forging? Now that was more like it. From what he understood, among the celestial beings today, the highest proficiency in artifact forging belonged to Yuan Shi, who had merely achieved great mastery in this art. Although he could not obtain other treasures from the treasure distribution rock, attaining mastery in artifact forging was not in vain. As for the insight into the laws of space, he had already reached a minor success in that area, rendering it of little use, as it could not be stacked but could be bestowed upon others. With a heavy exhale, Tong Yi expelled a breath of turbid air. The once massive and ancient treasure distribution rock was effortlessly scattered, dissolving into dust and vanishing into chaos. Silence. The entire square succumbed to an eerie stillness. All the mighty beings who had been stifling their laughter just moments ago were now rendered speechless, their hairs standing on end and their scalps tingling. Gulp. It was unclear who first swallowed their saliva, breaking the silence, but it drew Tong Yi's gaze towards them. In that moment of eye contact, many of the mighty beings felt as though their souls had nearly fled their bodies. Saint, please temper your wrath. They hurriedly bowed, their voices raised in exclamation while their hearts raced with trepidation. Each blamed themselves for having found amusement in the situation moments before. The primordial sage, in his fury, had shattered the treasured splitting rock with ease. Such force, a mere slap reduced it to dust. What if he were to unleash that power upon them? It would be their end. Among them, the ancestor of the Dark River trembled uncontrollably, beads of cold sweat streaming down his face. Within, he screamed in panic. How terrifying. How brutal. The fate of the splitting rock mirrored his own past experiences. Thankfully, he had refrained from laughter moments ago. Surely, even if the sage continued his slaughter, he would not be implicated, right? Fortunately, the scene they had envisioned, where the primordial sage would turn his wrath upon them, did not materialize. What is the meaning of this? I merely found the splitting rock to be a nuisance. Why would I harbor wrath or seek to appease it? With a calm demeanor, Tong Yi waved his hand gently, addressing the still bowing figures of the mighty beings. He would never admit that he was infuriated out of shame. We take our leave. We dare not disturb the sage any longer. Upon hearing these words, the expressions of all the great beings radiated with the joy of having survived a calamity. They nodded in unison, slowly retreating to the edge of the square before swiftly vanishing into the chaos. As for agreeing that the splitting rock was bothersome, nonsense. That was placed there by the Tao ancestor. The primordial sage dared to shatter it, and they wouldn't even dare to utter a complaint. Brother, I feel embarrassed to ask, but do you not fear the elder's ire for breaking the splitting rock? At that moment, Hao Tian timidly tugged at Tong Yi's sleeve and inquired. Tong Yi smiled slightly at his words. This splitting rock was already prepared for me by my master. If you don't believe me, you may ask. His statement was not a jest aimed at Hao Tian, but rather a conjecture of his own. The splitting rock had fortuitously arrived at him just as it was divided. Was it mere coincidence? How could his master know that he would allow Hao Tian and Yao Qi to divide it first? Furthermore, the 3 treasures they possessed were of no use to him. Thus, while one could speak of the splitting rock as a matter of fate, it had long been orchestrated by that old man. Much like in his previous life, playing a slot machine or a claw machine, if he failed to win. It wasn't his inadequacy, but rather a flaw in the machine. Indeed, that was why he shattered the splitting rock, to gain something in return. Otherwise, after waiting in line for so long, wouldn't he be at a loss? Hao Tian was taken aback, his brows furrowed, disbelief etched across his face. As for inquiring with the elder, he had no intention. He and Yao Qi were responsible for dividing treasures among numerous powerful beings. Now that the splitting rock had been shattered by his brother, how could he dare to confront the elder? Would he not be inviting punishment upon himself? Brother, I offer you this golden hairpin and the small white flag. Please do not be angry any longer. At this moment, Yao Qi cautiously approached, cradling the small white flag and the golden hairpin in her hands, softly speaking. In her heart, she shared the same sentiment as Hao Tian. believing that the master had not truly intended to bestow the treasure rock upon her elder brother. She surmised that her brother, unable to obtain the precious items, was upset, which led him to shatter the treasure rock. However, her approach differed from Hao Yin's. She did not wish to inquire further, simply feeling that by presenting her acquired treasures to her brother, he would no longer harbor any displeasure. Upon hearing this, and seeing the two treasures in Yaoqi's hands, Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback before a smile graced his lips. He reached out to ruffle Yaoqi's hair and chuckled, saying, "I truly am not angry. Let us return and meet our master. Can I truly place such burdens upon you?" Upon hearing these words, Yaoqi and Hao Yin studied Tong Yi's expression several times before they finally breathed a sigh of relief. The two resumed their smiles and turned, ready to soar towards the back of the grand hall. They were eager to show their master the treasures they had obtained. Just then, two figures approached with a hint of trepidation. "Dong Hua pays respects to the sage," one said. "Shi Hua pays respects to the sage," the other followed. It was none other than the Eastern King and the Western Queen. However, unlike before the third sermon, the two now faced Tong Yi with an expression devoid of flattery, their demeanor primarily characterized by fear. They referred to themselves by their true names, too intimidated to mention their titles. After all, they had previously been unaware that Han Yuan had indeed attained sainthood. They had not witnessed Huan Yuan's overwhelming display of power, dispatching a river of souls with a mere slap. Coupled with the recent incident of shattering the treasure rock, their perception of the Han Yuan sage had undergone a dramatic transformation. They questioned themselves. Is this still someone they could seek favor from? Perhaps. Who knows? If they could indeed gain his favor, their futures would be secured. Thus, after much inner turmoil, they steeled their resolve to greet him. Fortunately, they had a valid reason. They had previously agreed to host a banquet to invite Han Yuan after the sermon concluded, and they wished to inquire whether the banquet would still take place. "Oh, it turns out to be the two of you. I almost forgot to congratulate you both on acquiring such splendid treasures," Tong Yi remarked, his expression remaining calm. Upon hearing this, the Eastern King and the Western Queen trembled. How unfortunate to bring up such matters. They feared that the sage might become imbalanced in spirit and take offense should he place his hand upon their shoulders. Consequently, the Eastern King refrained from continuing the conversation and promptly bowed, saying, "We have come to inquire if the sage will still attend the banquet." With this utterance, both the Eastern King and the Western Queen lowered their postures, daring not to meet Huan Yuan's gaze directly. Within their hearts, apprehension loomed. Their hands unconsciously clenched into fists beneath their robes. Upon hearing the words, Tong Yi finally revealed a smile. "We shall go as promised. However, I wonder where the two of you have chosen to host the banquet?" Chapter 116, The Heavenly Pool of West Kunlun. Bestowing the pinnacle of six-eared golden immortal in the square, several dozen figures lingered, unwilling to depart from the venue. They stood at a distance, discreetly observing the Eastern King and the Western Queen. It was they who had urged the Eastern King and Western Queen to inquire about the primordial sage. Why? Because they had been preparing since the second sermon, intent on ingratiating themselves with the sage through this banquet, with gifts already prepared. Although they had only just realized that the primordial was not a fellow Taoist or a brother in the way, but a sage of formidable ferocity. Prone to shattering objects when displeased, it mattered little. As the saying goes, fortune favors the bold. If they could curry favor with the sage, it would be all the more advantageous. Thus, they incited the Eastern King to make the inquiry. At this moment, seeing the primordial sage smile and ask where the banquet would be held, the assembled powerful beings collectively exhaled a sigh of relief. They exchanged glances, each breaking into radiant smiles. The current situation in the primordial realm had shifted. The sage had established the Xianmen and had 7 disciples. It was inevitable that various factions would arise beneath the Xianmen. Should they manage to curry favor with the primordial sage, they could proclaim themselves the foremost disciples of the Xianmen. Who would then dare to provoke them? Even the 3 pure ones would pose no threat. With this thought, the powerful beings were filled with indescribable excitement. Upon hearing Tong Yi's words, the Eastern King and Western Queen displayed expressions of joy. Indeed, the venue is set at the Heavenly Pool of West Kunlun. It is our sanctuary, boasting breathtaking scenery and rich spiritual energy. And we extend a special invitation to the sage to come and behold it. The Eastern King, without further contemplation, responded with enthusiasm, his face alight with smiles. Though inwardly he sighed. If only his immortal island had remained, inviting the sage there would have been even more splendid. Now, he could only rely on the Western Queen's sanctuary as a substitute. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi blinked and glanced at the beaming Western Queen behind the Eastern King, secretly thinking how unexpected it was that this fellow still thrived on the soft support of others. It seemed he was enjoying it quite well. Initially, he had thought that without the Abbot Island, the Eastern King would be at a loss. Yet, to his surprise, he was directly utilizing the Western Queen's sanctuary for the banquet. This old fellow's audacity was indeed unparalleled, comparable to the future Bull Demon King. As for West Kunlun, Tong, he had also heard of it. Among the vast lands of the primordial realm, it was indeed more prominent than the mountains. Undoubtedly, it was the Buzhou Mountain, located at the very center of the earth, towering like a pillar that supports the heavens, steep and formidable. However, in terms of sheer expanse, the Kunlun Mountains were the progenitor of all mountains, their vastness stretching across the 5 continents in all directions. The highest peak of the Kunlun Mountains is the sacred site of the 3 Pure Ones. West Kunlun, associated with the Queen Mother of the West, represents the loftiest summit extending into the western lands, a realm of desolation yet imbued with rich spiritual energy, known as the blessed abode of the Queen Mother. Heavenly Pool? Brother,